Good evening, everybody, and welcome to round number 5 of this year's ASR Supercars Championship. And we take the entire field, put them on a plane, and we go stateside. We're off to the United States, the home of Uncle Sam, the red, white and blue star-spangled banner, and the right to bear arms if you're a fan of the American Constitution. But what is the field bearing in terms of arms this week? Well, that means that they are bearing 650 horsepower of a rear-wheel drive supercar, pointing them at turn number 1, doing a bunch of laps and honing in on the finish line. The triple header format is a little bit different this time around for International Round, and as we welcome Benjamin Rhodey Rhodes to the commentary box alongside myself, Rhodey, it's not the only thing that's a little bit different this round. We've got some different liveries, some different drivers to go along with the different format.
Absolutely. Good evening, Nether. Good evening to everybody watching along. And yeah, something different for this round. We're at Watkins Glen track, which has been visited digitally a few times. Not been visited yet IRL, but I imagine if money existed, they wouldn't say no to it, because it is a very good track for supercars racing, as we saw in Dev Series last week. But yes, a lot of different liveries on the table. By all means, not Auden. A lot of cars still in familiar paint schemes, and there are a few other drivers spotted through the field as a result of how well Dev Series performed last week, that we've opened up the doors to anybody that was interested that was a full-time registered Super 2 entry. So there are a few drivers in here tonight that are making their debut starts in Supercars as a result of that.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It was a very, very hard decision for the ASR admin team to work out who to offer the wildcard drives to, so the doors were comprehensively thrown open and there was a clamouring of crew looking for positions in the field, even from a substitute point of view as well. There were several drivers not able to make it this round, so they were on the dog and bone very, very early in the piece, asking who on earth they could poach to pinch and put into the seats of their supercars. So a number of drivers in for substitution purposes, some of them also in for the guest cars, so keep an eye out for those. There will be plenty of drivers that we'll have to introduce you to along the way, and who is driving what cars tonight. Now, very important, we said a few seconds ago, it is a very, very different format this round. It's still the triple head format. That's not the big piece of the puzzle. It's all about the distances for each of the races and how those races are being conducted. So when you have a look at our track overview coming up in just a few seconds' time, you'll get to see about this track, and then we will start to dive into the details. So let's bring it up. It's Watkins Glen. As we said, we're off to the continental United States, all the way onto the East Coast, if you want to be technically correct. LA on the West Coast, New York on the East Coast, and there's been no shortage of NASCAR races and all sorts of GT racing here over the years. Watkins Glen in upstate New York. It looks like it's a fair distance away on the map there. In reality, it isn't. It's only a couple of hours drive, and we hone in on the circuit. We are using the short layout with the inner loop chicane tonight, not the full boot layout, just a hair under 4 kilometres long, Rhodey. There's no track records on the board, so that means there's history to be made tonight.
Absolutely, and it's not like we're not going to come back to Watkins Glen at any point, some point, but yeah, some records will probably stay for a while, depending on how things go in the future. But no, it's a very different sort of track, especially for those that are familiar to Watkins. We have used Watkins quite comprehensively before. A lot of the use for us has more been for GT3 style racing around the full layout, which includes the boot. But yeah, not often we've used the inner loop with the bus stop. Dev Series was one. I think a couple of TSAC series a couple of years ago might have used it as well. But no, it's a very fast layout. For comparative average, the out lap or the formation lap is over 2 minutes. The race lap is just over 1 minute. You forget quite how long this track is once you're up to speed. And yeah, there is probably some of the fastest corners, although supercars like to claim that Conrod has the fastest corner in Australia, and it does, but turns 2, 3, and 4 are flat in the supercar, which doesn't seem right because they don't seem to be big aero cars, but once you're in there and on the track, you see quite how fast you can go around this track. So it's definitely good track for carrying speed on, and very much it's not a lot in terms of braking opportunities, but if you can capitalize in those braking opportunities, you'll be the one making up spots.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's a very, very high-speed roller coaster. Once you leave turn 1, you do not take your foot off the accelerator again until you get to turn 5, which is the first right-hand corner in the inner loop, or the bus stop chicane, as it's affectionately known. Big sections of flat-out racing here. A big portion of lap, I'd probably say it's somewhere up around 70% full throttle all the way around this lap, so the full throttle percentage is extremely high. And this circuit is only 800 metres longer than Sandown in Australia, which you do a lap around there in about a minute 7 to a minute 10. You're doing similar lap times around here for a track that's 800 metres longer. That just goes to show you how fast this place actually is. Now, very, very important, as we just said a few seconds ago, if you looked on the previous screen, you would have seen that there are 16 lap races tonight. Now, that does not equate to 50 kilometres when you do the math. When you do 16 times 3.943 kilometres for a lap, you get just a hair over 60 kilometres of racing. So it's a little bit of a different format. It's 3 lots of 60 kilometre races tonight instead of the usual 3 lots of 50 kilometres. And that's just purely because the races are going to go so fast. When this track was selected, we didn't know what the format was going to be until the supercar drivers had officially voted on the circuit, and then we had to pick out what an appropriate format was going to be. So that is what the lap times dictated. It was going to be a longer race. So a little bit of a more interesting dilemma, because with the 50k races you can push until your heart's content. With an extra couple of laps on the board, you're going to have to just pare it back a little bit, just make sure those tyres can reach the end so you don't have to pit stop part way through the race. And then the other format, then making it very, very interesting, Rody, and this is, I wouldn't say it's the personal favourite, but this is really going to add some flavour, I think, to the round, is that the qualifying format remains unchanged. So qualifying will set the grid for race 1 in the 3-race format, as it always does. But the middle race is the killer. The middle race will be a top half inversion of the finishing results of race number 1, and then race number 3's grid will be determined by the progressive finishing results of race number 2. So it's mixing it up a little bit tonight for international rounds, so adding a little bit of spice and giving a few drivers a bit more of an incentive to try and get into that top half of the field to be towards the front of the grid for race number 2.
Absolutely. And it's something that we haven't gone back to in a while. We're going back to, I think, sort of 2018, 2019, where we were last looking at reverse grids, which lines up with supercars themselves. Supercars themselves haven't done a reverse grid of any sort for, we're probably coming on to 20 years, just because of, at least for supercars, the potential for carnage. And yeah, there is high potential here, but we're on a grid which is probably the tightest and across the field, probably the most consistent that we've had in the history of ASR Supercars. And so we're in a situation where we're probably the best equipped we're ever going to be to able to run a top 10 or a top 12 inversion in this case, and have it not turn into a safety car. So it'll be something different. And look, extra challenge for those guys that perform well in race 1, that, yeah, that'll put them towards the middle of the pack for race 2. And crucially as well, that then is a progressive grid into race 3. So you sort of, it's one of those things, not unlike I suppose the strategy that comes in your head if you get penalized in, or you have a reverse of grid, a rear of grid start in a 3-race format like Dev Series, where you have to kind of work out how you want to run your race. And I think a lot of guys probably going to find some very big push in race 2 to set themselves up comfortably for race 3. And the inverse, you'll find some guys that are a bit higher than where they normally be, that especially those guys that feel like they should be up there. I mean, to sort of give an idea of the people I've sort of got in mind, people like some of the Pixel Sim Sports guys, for example. I don't say they won't be up the front, but they might benefit very nicely from a top 12 inversion. I guarantee they won't be taking that as I'm in the top 12 or I'm in the top 5, but that's what it is. No, they're going to try and make that last as long as possible. So we're going to see some very aggressive driving, or very hard driving, from some guys in that top 12 inversion, and probably some very, I wouldn't quite say cautious. It's still going to be aggressive, but it's going to be intense, but it's going to be defensive rather than offensive from the guys at the front who want to try and stay at the front for hopefully race 2 and then into race 3.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, is that how hard do you want to go at it in race number one to put yourself in a good position for the start of race number two? If you're at the back or if you're on that sort of fringe of that sort of halfway point, you've got to work out the balance. You've got to work out the balance of attack versus maybe trying to defend a bit later on in the race. If someone's been able to preserve their rubber a little bit more, has a little bit more meat on their tyres and can sort of charge a little bit harder at the back end compared to what you can, then you've got to play defence. And you've got to play defence around a track that's very, very high speed and very difficult to defend in the slipstream, especially heading up through the first sector towards the inner loop chicane. So that's where it's going to be won and lost, I think, especially for the change between race one and race two. Race two to race three is going to be just, again, a little bit of a different beast. I mean, drivers that are on the front row of the grid, they're going to try and scamper away as quickly as possible while the quicker guys are buried in the field, and then they'll have to maybe play a little bit of defence toward the middle stages and the back end of race number two to be in a good spot for the progressive changeover into race number three. We're just waiting on a couple of drivers just to finalise a couple of things and the briefing just to be finished up. So while we are doing that, we are going to have a very quick look at where the drivers' standings and the team standings sit at the moment after 4 rounds. And at the moment, Will Devenish has taken everything before him at the moment. He's got the maximum points, he's got all the pole positions, he's got all the race wins to date, and the only thing he hasn't got in his armoury as a clean sweep is the fastest laps. That's been split between 3 drivers, as you can see on the left-hand side of your picture there. But it's the CRE Engineering teammates, the top 2 in the standings. But it's very, very close in a lot of stages here, Reddy, too. If we take a look there, Igmanis, Brendan Ross and Tim Redmond, all very, very close for comfort. And then you've got Lewis Wedding, Noah Turra and Lockie Locks, the next group of 3 cars. And then again, Foley and NZ Snipes, who unfortunately is absent tonight, and to a lesser extent, Leonard Grossel. That's not decided either. So there's still a long way to go in the championship, but all the way up and down the field, still plenty of drivers very, very close, and it doesn't take too much for positions to change hands.
Yeah, there's a lot of really juicy battles going on at the depth of the grid. Obviously, Will is up front, pretty comfortably up front, and it's going to take, well, perhaps tonight will be the start of a movement to change that. But then, yeah, Tomo 2 points over Brendan Ross, who is very confident in his inability to do well, but the points are refusing to show that for him. And then Tim Redmond just in behind, and then Lewis Wedding, another driver, both the Pixel guys actually refusing to. I think they spent a good part of last year trying to convince us they were last and second last, and they nearly won teams last year, and they're comfortably second in teams again this year. Yeah, no, there's some really good battles going on through the field. Some guys we're going to start to see moving up, I think, as well, is Leonard Grossel. He starts to get comfortable in a full-time seat. He did. By virtue of a lot of guest drives, or by virtue of the guest drive at round 1, he set himself up quite nicely to start off with. And another one that'll be interesting to see how he goes actually is Brapp. And Brapp is a part-time entrant, but he is now a full-time entrant by virtue of what PBF are doing, which is essentially a super light program, similar to what was done in Supercars of years past, or a year past actually, where him and Scott Murrell and John McDonald will be sharing a car on a rotating basis for the rest of the season. So, yeah, Brapp might still, he's going to have to rely on some guest drives elsewhere, and obviously also to be offered a guest drive to begin with as a Super 2 runner. But Brapp's another one that will come up pretty nicely. But yeah, there's some really good battles going on for the guys, and people like Dan Liccardo will come up with results tonight. Hans Brunswick and Lockie Burke, I expect to see some make some moves now that they're both here tonight as well. I think it's the first time in. I don't think it's the first time ever, but we didn't think we'd see a lot of all 4 pixel cars on the grid together this year, but this is one of the rounds that it's worked out for them. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's just some really, yeah, there's nothing, yeah, even I think at this point, mathematically, the lead's not even set guaranteed this year. We're still way too early to guarantee anything just yet.
Yeah, you're right. There's still a long, long way to go. Not really too early in the game to guarantee absolutely anything yet, although looking pretty ominous for the current championship leader. Over the page we go. Let's have a look at the team standings. Similar situation to what we saw on the page there just a few moments ago. The CRE race engineering teammates, no surprise that their team's out in front by virtue of how many points they've amassed. The Pixel racing team guys have got a little bit of work still to do to catch up. They are their nearest challengers at the moment. And again, some very, very close confines being held here. 25 points between the two Mustang teams, the Amped Up Racing by CRE and the Beyond Racing stables. They are very, very close for comfort. PBF's not too far back, but they have got the Team Tanifer guys breathing down their neck. And then the two CRE teams that you can see in there, Anson Motorsport and Performance Racing, only 2 points at the early going here, separating those two drivers. And then despite all the adversity they've had, the Beyond Racing Young Guns are still within striking distance of the Fuchs HSP dealer team, which of course have had their fair share of single car running over the last couple of rounds. Unfortunately, Rody, we sort of jumped the gun a little bit early. That looks set to continue. It looks like Hans Brunswick has had some sort of hardware failure with his wheel, so he's actually a late withdrawal. He was in the practice server. He is a late withdrawal from this one, so we will not be seeing all 4 of the Pixel cars out there on the circuit tonight, sadly. But again, still a very, very long way to go in the championship. Only 4 rounds of the 13 completed, as we've got all 23 of the drivers in the server tonight that are going to be taking part, and we are getting set for qualifying. So importantly, when it comes to the top half of the field inversion, there are 23 drivers in the field tonight. Therefore, the halfway point, if you do your math, if you take 23 and divide it by 2, is 11.5. Now, you can't have half a car on pole, so what that means is the middle car, which in this case would be the 12th place finisher, in race 1 is the car that will be on pole. So it's rounded up to the nearest full place. So whoever finishes 12th and 11th respectively in race number 1 will be on the front row for race number 2 tonight. So keep in mind when we see how things pan out in qualifying, you'll be able to get a rough idea based on that logic of who you can sort of pencil in for a front row start in race number 2. Different format, throwing up a few different challenges. Love it.
Exactly. One thing I will say on that, though, just quickly, is we saw this in Dev Series last week, but being quick by yourself in clean air in qualifying does not track to being quick in dirty air or slipstream in a race setting. There were a few guys that definitely didn't qualify too well, but got on quite strongly throughout the race in the slipstream. I'll nominate myself as one of them. I'm still a little salty about how poorly I did after I saw how quick my car was on single lap pace in a race setting. But you're going to find it will set up a lot of drivers, and probably the guys at the front will stay the same. But the mid pack, with that slipstream buying in, with the way this track races, is going to shake around quite a bit. Yes.
It definitely will. Now, I've been thinking about this during the week as well, Rody, and I was sort of wondering, are we going to see some sort of Monza-style thing with teammates like we do in Formula 1, where they're giving themselves a big tow either up the front straight or mainly up through the fast left-right section heading up the hill, turns 2, 3 and 4, to try and gain some time, to try and maybe get at least one team car towards the front of the grid. I've been toying with the idea about whether it's actually going to happen. That part has sort of been in the back of my mind, and I get to the impression that we may not see a lot of it.
It's entirely possible, and I wouldn't be surprised to see some of the out-of-the-box teams. I put it, some of the guys that really go to the extent of knowledge that might have thought about it. I wouldn't be surprised to see, for example, Pixel doing it, but it's not like a situation where you make no gains. You make some gains, but I don't feel the gains they don't have like the big flashing red lights and the horns on them to know, hey, this to tell you this is a gain that people are going to go, we have to do this. I wouldn't be surprised for qualifying if a lot of guys will try and run single air. That said, I mean, with what we've got this season, we've got a lot of, ultimately everybody who's currently registered falls under one of 4 team banners, and to be fair, some guys are out there that kind of cross banners entirely. I know like Scott Murrell's registered for PBF now, but he's been running with CRE and is currently running tonight with the Kiwis.
Yeah, here he is on screen right now.
There's as we start to see qualifying kicking off, there's a lot of guys that are cross banners. I wouldn't be surprised if we see it, but I don't think it'll be as strict as, say, 2 individual cars from the same team doing it. I think we might see, for example, CRE as a whole help out CRE as a whole. Yeah. But we'll see as qualifying pans on.
We certainly will. So there's a couple of drivers to keep an eye out for. You just mentioned Scott Murrell in one of the Fords this time around, the going from CRE to the Beyond Racing Team Tanifer car. The other one, which is a big surprise, is Steve Warwick. We thought he was a Holden man for life. He's showing no allegiances here. He's actually in a Ford and with the Kiwi stable. So that's really great to see that he's having another crack at supercars in a different model compared to what we're used to seeing. So let's see if that alters his driving style at all, as lap times are starting to be posted throughout the first couple of sectors. I think, look, who's looking at it at the moment? Looks like Noah Turra might be the first one with a sector time on the board, followed by Daniel Cox, who we're on board with, and it is indeed Turra from Cox, followed by Devenish and Liccardo. They're the ones posting sectors at the moment, with Turra 29.6 to the first sector, so he has got a purple sector 1 at the moment, and he's going to be the first one to set a proper lap time, provided he doesn't blow it wide at this part of the track, which is where Cox is coming up to, that sort of very, very fast, high-speed left-hander before you get to the last corner on the circuit. And Turra now to the line. Opening salvo, 108.5, so that's not too bad. That's actually about 2 tenths away from the quickest lap he put down in practice earlier on in the week.
Yeah, so Turra to the top, Will Devenish second. Dane Liccardo up in third, which is a bit of a surprise. That said, Dane is back to Supercars, and he's actually had a bit of time to put in this week. He seems to be quite enjoying this track. Leonard's just popped up over him. Brap up to fifth. Scott Burrell up to sixth in his, I think, one of his first drives in a Mustang. And Tim Redmond currently sitting in seventh. He was a little higher in pace in the practice session. And we've seen just Egmanis go to the top now as well.
Yep, Egmanis goes to pole by about 3.5 thousandths of a second. So he's done quite nicely there. Brenton Foley, next man to cross the line. Plenty of tribute liveries this week. Brenton Foley with a track strike, so he's going to have to go again. Lockie Lock behind him. He has only, actually he got a track strike by the looks of things as well.
Yeah, and it's easy enough to do around here. The walls do delineate at the edge of the track pretty obviously in some spots, but the bus stops became the one easy one to pick up a track on. You do find yourself exploring those curbs. They are fairly flat, so you can drive a supercar over there without incurring too much of a speed penalty, and in fact you actually gain a bit of speed if you get the right line through there, but obviously you're going to balance the track up. So I think a few guys trying a little bit too hard too early. You ideally want to get a bank lap in and then start pushing something a little more aggressive. But yeah, we're starting to see some guys learn the edge of the track, and also the last couple of corners, the second last corner is also a good one, an easy one to lose time out. You find that gets tighter than you think it will, and you end up spraying out over the exit curb. But everyone seems to have been following that pretty well for the most points so far.
Little bit of an awkward bobble for Lindsay Muddle through the final part of the bus stop chicane. That actually put him well wide for the next turn, the big sweeping 180-degree right-hander that brings you onto the short chute, brings you down to sector 2, so that cost him a fair bit of time. You can see here he is aboard the number 38 Beyond Racing Young Guns entry that's normally piloted by Bailey Hall. He's absent tonight, so this time is set to put Lindsay around about 17th to 18th position at the moment, with an opening lap time of 110.4. He was 19th at the end of the day there, so he's got his banker lap in, but there's definitely still some more time to find with plenty of time on the board. Now, Brendan Ross, I just noticed as well, he's actually sat up in the pit lane. Now, he's unfortunately going to have a rear grid start for the first race tonight by virtue of a penalty that came over from Barbagallo, but I did notice that he was out there on the track potentially with Lewis Wedding. I'm not sure if he was trying to give Wedding a bit of a tow up the back straight, but hey, he's not allowed to set a lap time, but he's out there turning a couple of laps, but albeit not putting a time on the board.
Exactly. I did mention the teams that are likely to go out of the box in their thinking, and they are one of them, because I did get a message from Rossi earlier that he went through the sub-regs and there was nothing saying that he couldn't get out on track, he just couldn't set a lap time. So
here's that evidence
out
right
there
now.
he's setting up, probably more than likely setting up to be a slipstream buddy for Lewis Wedding to help him get up the grid, but obviously Brendan Ross won't be starting from Holliday on the back, so he might actually be set up well if he's got good pace to set himself up for a good start in race 2 by virtue of the inversion.
That's right, so that's what we need to sort of pay a bit of attention there to and just see how things go. Peter Throw across the line, moves up one spot. Let's actually go on board with the Beyond Racing entry here, and let's have a bit of a look at this circuit. So tuck it into turn 1 then. Now, unlike NASCAR, in supercars, there is no abuse of track limits going outside of turn 1, so you've got to be very careful that you stay inbound, you keep two wheels in contact with the curb. Turns 2, turns 3, turns 4. You do not want to use any of these curves. Pete's done a very, very nice job there of negotiating the very, very high-speed section of the track, because if you get the curves, you will upset the car something chronic. You take a bit of curb here at the bus stop chicane. 1, 2, 3, missed the apex there, 4, got the 4th apex. You've got 3 out of the 4, so it's not too bad. And then you've got to tuck it in. You've got to sort of find a way to either tuck it in early and hug it, or you've got to tuck it in late and apply the throttle. Usually the way to go is to sort of stay a little bit wide and then you tuck it in for the last part, so you get as many kphs as possible down this short chute into the penultimate corner. Don't touch the inside curb. Don't run too far out the back side of the curb there either. And then tuck it in here again for the final corner. And then you've got to run it all the way out to the fence. All the way out to the fence. He didn't quite get it all the way out to the fence, but he did keep it on the black stuff, and he did improve his time, but he didn't improve the place.
No, but I mean, the gaps he's talking about trying to improve upon, Phil Boak is ahead by 1/1000th of a second, Daniel Fox ahead by 6/1000th of a second, so they're splitting hairs at this point in the mid-pack for Supercars.
Yeah, they certainly are. Here come the Pixel crew. They're coming down the front straight here, so Ross leading out for Lewis Wedding here, heading down towards turn number 1. Now, this will be the interesting telling part of the tale here. If Ross can get this right, and he can manage to give Wedding as much time as possible. Ross with massive abuse of the track limits there, but for him, he's not setting a lap time, so there's no harm, no foul there. But this is where the issue comes into play here. For Wedding, he needs to be in the toe. Ross needs to be putting his foot to the floor and make no mistakes. You can see Wedding gaining just a little bit, fractionally gaining. He's gained a half a second alone, and he's up on the sector 1 time, the mark of something chronic at the moment. A tenth and a little bit to the good with a purple sector time in sector 1. So it's working. This is the important bit. Wedding is in the game here by virtue of his teammate. Can we see another pole sitter potentially in the Supercars Championship this year? Gaining. He's lost a little bit of time in the sector 2 here, has Lewis Wedding. Ross bails out of the move and sends Wedding on his way, and that's probably about the best that Ross could actually do. Wedding is going to vault himself up the order here. Oh, he gets loose. He hits the wall. That's not going to do the work for him. All the hard work has been undone, and he gets a track strike for it. Off the wall.
Oh.
All the heartbreak for Lewis Wedding. Just in the last couple of corners, he did everything right. And for some reason, he gets a track strike after hitting the wall. That certainly would not have been something that would have been picked up on in the early going. But he was in the game.
Yeah, he was comfortably clear of whatever pace that people were going to attain outside of a slipstream. We did talk about it very early that maybe it was the way to go. And look, it's consistent with a lot of AMS tracks. If you get a track cut going outside the track too, you're not theoretically getting pace. And as I mentioned, the wall is the track limit around here, and if you rub the wall, you rub the track limit. But I guarantee, I know Lewis's wheel cost too much for him to pivot across the room, but I mean, if it was a cheaper wheel, it would currently be flying into his back wall.
Yeah, I've got a funny feeling you are right. So, and the hard part there is, Rody, I don't think the track limits were probably the bit to play there. I think it was more a case of by hitting the wall, probably the car's been launched in a bit of a funny angle, and it's just accidentally triggered the track limit. So that's probably not his own fault by any virtue of things. It's just a victim of the unfortunate circumstances. As Devenish goes to the top with a 108.186, so he has laid down the marker here as the clock strikes 0, and the last lap times can now be turned. So CRE 1 and 2 at the moment. Brap third on the order. That's an outstanding effort from Brap at the moment. As we're watching Noah Turret through the bus stop chicane, has he got anything left to challenge for the front row of the grid?
I mean, of the guys that are left, I think he's the best shot. Brap's already out of his lap. I think Tim's finished his last lap. He's just down. So but he's still within range where he could maybe make something up in the last sector here, but it's going to become pretty close if he can.
Yes, Cam Rutledge is ahead of Tara on the track, so he wouldn't have been giving too much of a tow to Noah Tara because he was a bit too far ahead. As Tara rubs the wall himself and comes to the line, he's not going to improve, so he stays 5th. Rutledge stayed 15th out of all of it. As we try and cycle through to see who else is out there potentially that could make an effort, Tim Redmond has finished 4th with a 108.492, so he's not improving. There are no more drivers out there that look like they are improving at the moment. I think qualifying is done and dusted, and it is.
That was actually a very quiet end to qualifying, and I don't know, maybe it's by I think one of the things that probably plays into that is the virtue of the length of the outlap by virtue of the length of the pit lane, the speed of the pit lane. It means we probably saw a lot of guys go for their last lap a minute or so earlier than we used to seeing, just by virtue of they didn't want to get out too late.
Yeah, I think so. People wanted, like the pit lane was very, very busy early on. That was the important piece of the puzzle. He was, a lot of drivers were just out and out there because they knew that they had to get around and get it started as early as possible, just the length of the lap alone. So the top 10 at the end of the day, Devenish was just over a half a tenth clear of his teammate. So they'll start on the front row of the grid. Brap third for PBF race or PBF Motorsport. That's a fantastic effort from him. Tim Redmond and Noah Turra, then Leonard Grossel, Liccardo, Lockie Lock, Brenton Foley in the 10, and Scott Murrell's got a top 10 start. So that's an impressive feat for him, Rhodey. Like, he's been practicing throughout the week, and it's netted him a 10th starting position.
Oh, exactly. Like, he's, by virtue of the last couple of rounds, he's been doing fill-in work for CRE, and he was on the server pretty early, just getting some practice and just waiting for that call to come. And this morning, I don't think it would have been an actual physical call, but he would have got a DM probably from one of the Kiwis saying, "Hey, we got a spare spot. Do you mind jumping in?" So filling in for Cheese this round, who is off at the Warriors game, I think, with Snipes.
Yes.
That's a very good performance for Scott, and he's very much been committed to supercars where he can be this year. It obviously isn't his primary focus. It's Dev Series is where he's trying to challenge for a driver's title, and definitely wants to be challenging for a team's title. But the way he's been going in his supercars wildcards, he's definitely putting himself in a good stead for whatever next year might entail for him.
Yeah, certainly is. So we move over just into a very brief warm-up session for the moment. So we get a chance to get, we actually lost Zach Brown from the qualifying session just a few minutes ago. So we're going to have a little bit of a look to see where he has ended up in the running order for when he jumps back in. I don't actually recall whether or not he set a lap time in that one at all, Rhodey, but if he did, he probably would have been somewhere around the mid-table. Just going over to our live races page to have a quick look at that for the moment. Actually, he had set a 108.937, so he was actually ahead of Brenton Foley and dropped out. So therefore, that means Scott Murrell's actually going to be starting 11th and Brenton Foley's going to start 10th when that all shakes out. So he was only a hair behind Lockie Lock. So Lockie Lock with a 108.917 and Zach Brown 108.937. So only 0.02 of a second between those two gentlemen.
But now that we're in that warm-up, we get a good chance to try and cover off some of the new liveries we're seeing tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one of those is on. Actually, the first couple are actually on your screen at the moment. So you've got Daniel Cox, who's just leaving the lane. Then his teammate is the next one in the queue in Cam Rutledge.
Yeah, so Coxie, and to be fair, most liveries we talk about last round, but for those that weren't here, we quickly go over it. So Coxie's is based on the number 94, which was seen in the NASCAR racing game from 1994 that was released for DOS by the developers who we now later know for NASCAR Racing 2004, and obviously the setup that led into what is now iRacing. But yeah, so this car had NASCAR down the side, had NASCAR across the bonnet, which obviously he swapped out for Envoy, CRE, and Anson. To be fair, I could tell you more about which ones he swapped out, but it's a DOS game, so the quality isn't great to be able to tell what the sponsors were. I imagine it maybe wouldn't have been a direct like swap comparison for Coxie, but that said, I imagine he probably found a better source than I could in my quick 5 minutes of searching. We talked about CRE, so we'll switch down to, I'm trying to find where the next one of them is on track, Noah Turra. He is running the Wonder Bread car, which we're used to seeing in Talladega Nights. This actually did become a real life, well, it didn't necessarily become a real life design as such, but Wonder Bread did actually make a return to NASCAR, as Nether mentioned last round, a couple of years later, but most famously known as a movie car, and there are a few movie cars on the grid tonight. Next one down then is Lockie Lock. He is running the famous Rainbow Warrior scheme, the DuPont scheme that Jeff Gordon ran for many years, probably one of the more iconic designs, and as I mentioned, I've seen it a few other places that isn't just a supercar, but it's, as I've said at the time when this was unveiled, it works for Lockie Lock because he's very much tended towards the busy designs this year, and a NASCAR has to be a busy design, especially from that period. They had like 30 contingency sponsors just on the front quarter panel, so it works perfectly for him.
Yeah, he's actually one of a few drivers at the moment that's not out there on the circuit doing some practice.
Next one down the queue for me is Brenton Foley. He's running the Melo Yellow car, which is another movie car. That's one of two designs we see on the grid based on Days of Thunder. So they're both based off of I think it was the number 51 Chevrolet. this Foley has been from one half of the movie, Phil Boakes, which we'll see later, from the other half of the movie, that being the City Chevrolet car. So they've both gone for a similar source, which makes sense. Next one I've got is Steve Berko, who is based on the other design we've seen Kyle Busch in, which isn't an M&M's car. We all used to see Kyle Busch in an M&M's livery, but this is one of the other designs he's rocked, which is interstate batteries. Which, as you mentioned, one of the decisive figures on the grid. Luckily, Steve's not that person. Luckily, he's not.
Yeah, I didn't say decisive. I said divisive.
Divisive. Sorry. I brain. But yeah, one of the more divisive people on the NASCAR grid. Boak is the next one through, and we mentioned he's running the City Chevrolet. So that's come up quite nicely on the car as well. Plenty of spot to put all the sponsors around the side. Next one through is then Cam Rutledge, running. I can't remember who the driver was now, but I quickly go back and check that.
Jeff Burton.
Jeff Burton, that's who it was. So running a Jeff Burton design. Wasn't actually for anything electrical based. It was, I think it was medicinal, ProSelect or something along those lines. It was not something that you would think electrical, but it just so much works that it was an electrical design that suits well with Cam being an electrician and all of his stuff on the car, so that's worked out quite nicely.
If I'm being honest with you, Rhodey, with this particular livery, this goes along the same lines that he did with the Better Electrical tribute livery that he did last year at Sandown for the retro round, and really wanted to run that for the rest of the year. I actually reckon this is a livery that Cam could probably run for the rest of the year if he wanted to, because it looks really nice.
Absolutely, and there's a few designs that have popped up. I know Brap wants to run his Sun Energy Super 2 car more than once, but John McDonald put him into a contract so he could only run the thing once, because John's not a fan of Sun Energy at all. Cycling through, the next one I think I've got is Nathan Higginson. Now, his is the only one that we didn't see before, isn't to do with oval racing. His is Neil Crompton's 1997 North American Touring Car Championship car. This was a Honda Accord. And this was the 2 years where America tried Super Touring. America did actually have Super Touring. It was only for 2 years. That did not go well. That said, they did have it running as, I think, either IndyCar or kart support. I did write down, or read it somewhere, but in my brain they conflate as the two. But they were on the support card for their top-level open wheelers. They just didn't get the entries that they needed, and after 2 years, the thing was shelved, which is a shame. Because I am happy the Americans got to try Super Touring, because I think there were some really cool cars. The next one I've got is Zach Brown. He's one of two very similar cars on the grid. His is based on Nathan Pretty's number 2 Cat Commodore from the 1993-1994 Ozcar season. Nathan Pretty would then bring Cat sponsorship later into Supercars, but yeah, this is an Ozcar design. And I've got to give a shout out to, I really should remember his name, Tex Linder, who gave me some of the designs. He paints a few Ozcar designs for iRacing, so he was able to give me some of the logos that went onto this car. And my orders got thrown off, people set times, but some other cars we'll see out there is Will Devenish and Cam Rutledge. Will's running a Dale Earnhardt design, and Cam's running a Kyle Larson design, which is the same design that we saw on John McDonald in Dev Series last year. And I've lost the other person I was looking for.
The other one was the car that Brap's actually driving, which is very
similar to the... The other one is Brap's car. Yeah, and so Brap's car is based on the car Nicole Pretty ran, which is Nathan Pretty's sister. I don't know when she ran it. She ran it a few years after, and I think it's basically the same base design.
Just minus a whole bunch of sponsors, basically.
Minus the sponsors, plus the black roof. So that's the changes. But that's why his car is so under-sponsored, because IRL it was under-sponsored. But yeah, that's all the liveries, and I imagine we'll talk about it a bit more as the night itself goes on. But just to cover that off before we get into the racing itself, so we don't get bogged down.
Yeah, that's right. So actually just switched away from the screen very, very quickly, because we did lose a couple of drivers from the warm-up sessions, just trying to get those drivers back in, as a few cars just started vanishing all by themselves. So one of those was actually Brap, who was the one that you were trying to get back around to, Rhodey, that you just missed out on the list there. So we are just going to briefly pause for a few seconds while we give Brap a chance to sort out whatever issue he has. Maybe the Sun Energy gods have come round to crucify his computer. I think there was an image circulating earlier in the week, or it might have been last week, of his new graphics card, and then he put like the Sun Energy logo on a little LED thing that was on the side of it, which is I don't know what you call that.
Yeah, Brap has
flexing.
To be fair, it's flexing. It's the most extra that I've seen. To use a youth word, it's the most extra that I've seen from a PC. But yeah, he's got 3 screens. The one he actually races on, he's got a screen on the side of his case and a screen on his graphics card. I don't know why you need those, but he has them. But the other thing I might be throwing around as well is that I think within the last day or two, the actual Sun Energy GT3 car got into a rather large accident. They are, I think, putting in a replacement chassis for it. But Kenny Habul is injured to the degree that he won't be running the Spa 24 with Chaz Mostert. I'm not sure if that's this week or if it's a few weeks' time, but he won't be running that. Yeah, it's coming up. So he won't be running that with him. And Brap is, by virtue of being a big Sun Energy fan, he's a big Kenny Habul fan. So I'm not sure if he's gone and emulated his hero there or what's happened. But yeah, that was the one car that was missing as we went through the order, and that'd be why.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I was in the process of circling back around to him, and he crossed the line, and then all of a sudden the car just vanished. So I don't quite know what happened, but obviously something has given up the ghost with his machine throughout the course of just in a few short minutes. So we are waiting just to see if he will load back in. I don't think he's too far away, and then we'll be right to get going again. There are a couple of drivers that are just sort of starting to pull out of the pits and just do another couple of quick little laps. So basically, it just looked like his internet was died, and he was basically switching to his hotspot by the looks of things. So that's something we've seen a few times before. I know personally, I raced with a hotspot for a little while when I was in a rental unit for a very, very short period of time. But it's not something that you want to have let go on you at a moment's notice.
Yeah, we're going back to the days of going back to sort of 2019. I know Foley won a championship off of the first 2 rounds running off of a hotspot. It wasn't great. He did get a couple of DCs in there, but the home internet wasn't much better either at the time. But yeah, he was running off a hotspot for a little bit there. And yeah, it's not ideal. I know I've done a few nights of commentary off of hotspots. We're going back to, I think, again, 2019, 2020, when this has to be 29 actually. I think I did some ARW commentary from a hotspot because I took my PC with me when I went to Bright one week, and we were still there on a Wednesday when I was supposed to be doing ARW commentary. So that was different, setting up in someone's lounge room and telling everyone to be quiet for 2 hours. But it's not ideal. But I mean, we've got decent enough connection, and to be fair, Brap's in suburban Melbourne, so his phone reception won't be terrible. But hopefully, he can get his Wi-Fi fixed for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're not too far away now. Qualifying is done. Warm-up is done. Time to go racing in the continental United States for, I don't know, what seems to have been, it's about, nearly 6 years now, Rody, isn't it? Because the last time we went was 2018, was Barber Motorsport Park. That was when ASR was in its infancy, and that was the last time that we were in the United States for a round. Not in North America, because of course there was another round that was held at Montreal in Canada in that very same year. And then the only other flyaway round that we've had for Supercars since, outside of the New Zealand, is the Bahrain round. So it's been a little while. Bahrain was back in 2021, so quite some time ago.
Yeah, so it's good to get out and about though, and something different for these guys, and we're not too far. I think we got everybody set up for the most part. Should be not too far off rolling underway.
Just one driver that we're waiting on, 13th place car on the grid, which happens to be Phil Boak. So we're just waiting on him to jump into the queue. There he is, and we are set to get underway here for formation lap, and away we go with the pole sitter, Will Devenish.
Alrighty, so starting from pole, here's Will Devenish doing his best impersonation of the Intimidator tonight. He was a strong driver, a very quick driver in NASCAR, and Will's very much trying to set and channel that up for Supercars tonight. Starting alongside him is, I was about to say Kyle Larson. It's Curtis Egmanis in Kyle Larson's car. Again, another pacey driver, won a championship with this livery, and maybe not the championship winner, but he's going to try and do very well. Starting from third is Brap, very under-sponsored for that starting position, this car. But Brap is very much ASR's Bristol, ASR's NASCAR guy, so he's doing well. Doesn't surprise too many people. Tim Redmond in fourth in the Hooney Kiwi. Makes sense, actually. It's one of the first time that his American livery is in America. Starting from fifth is Noah Turra in the Wonderbread car for Amped Up Racing, with Leonard Grossel in sixth, just his standard ATS-inspired design. Dane Liccardo in seventh in the design that he meant to debut at Queensland but wasn't present for, so he is now back in that Outworld car. with Lockie Lock in 8th in the Rainbow Warrior. 9th is Zach Brown, the second of the PBF cars now, with the number 2 Cat Commodore, with Brendan Foley in 10th, Mellow Yellow. 11th is Scotty Murrell filling in for Cheese over at the Kiwis from Beyond Racing Team Canifa, with Steve Burko in 12th in the Interstate Batteries car. 13th is Phil Boak for PBF Motorsport running the City Chevrolet livery, with Lindsay Muddle up in 14th for Beyond Racing Young Guns, qualifying effort for him. 15th is Steve Warwick for Team Canifa filling in as well, with Cam Rutledge in 16th in the purple and black Bill Wright CRE entry. 17th is Daniel Cox, his teammate in the Envoy Super DOS 94 livery, with Pete Thrower in 18th in his standard livery. 19th is Lockie Burke in one of the Alts, I believe, for HSB, but I can't remember which one. 20th is Jacob Palfrey, guest driving from the Dev Series in the Castrol Mustang. 21st is Lewis Wedding, driving one of the real Holden Pixel Racing team cars, with Nathan Higginson in 22nd for Beyond Racing Young Guns and Labatt Blue. And starting last by virtue of a rear grid from his driving in the last round is Brennan Ross, the second and last of the real Holden Pixel Racing team cars on the grid.
There we go, there's your grid as they all roll through to the start-finish line here, just to form up for the first of 16 laps. That's right, 16 laps. It's a long way to go, but it's going to go very, very fast when it comes to racing tonight. It'll be over probably in less than, well and truly in less than 20 minutes at this rate per race, and there's 3 of them tonight. Last couple of cars just getting into queue at the back, the Pixel cars. Brendan Ross, the last man to slot into position, and just waiting on a few drivers that are just slightly out of spot. It's a bit difficult because there are no grid markings here at Watkins Glen. It's typically a place where you go racing in a fashion of behind the pace car when you start with this rolling start. Well, we're back time to go racing here at Watkins Glen, and off we go for race 10 of the championship. Poor start for Devenish, great start for Redmond, great start for Igmanis. They were very, very close to being 3 wide for a few brief moments. They're 5 wide almost all the way back in the field. It's so tight. And there goes Grossel. Grossel spun around. He'll hit the inside. Looks like Throwers around at the back too. Early safety car has been called. Early safety car called after a few drivers caught out and spun around after all of that, catching up in the back. We've got to go back and take a look at that on the replay and have a look at what happened to Grossel. He was buried in the middle of the in 6th place there. He had a good start. He was on the outside here, and he got a little bit. Will Devenish got into the right rear quarter panel of that car, and around he went. And then Thrower just all on his own there. If we just wind it back a touch and have a look here. Thrower was already sideways before he arrived on the scene, so I think maybe Thrower might have been a little bit too wide of his own volition.
Yeah, I think in Leonard's case, going back and having a look at that, I think it was the panel, the overlap, I think so much wasn't an issue. It was the fact that when there was overlap with him and Will, there was a bit of wheel-to-wheel contact, which caused both cars to hop, and wheel-to-wheel contact is a very easy way to upset a supercar. As for Pete Thrower, I think he was just stuck on the outside of his teammate Nathan Higginson and just ran the dirty road and then tried to put the foot down, and the car said no bueno and spun him around. So he got out of that a little better than Grossel, who probably would have got a little bit of damage, probably not enough to really affect him. Mostly rear damage, I think, from the back end of the wall. But you don't really tend to see too much air around the rear of the supercar anyway, so get away with that pretty fine. It's more just a positional offset with Pete Thrower down to 22nd now off that start.
And hitting. Here's the replay.
Down to 22nd.
Oh, I can just look at the replay there. We're just on board with Will Devenish, having a little bit of a look at the contact through turn number 1. He actually got up on the curb and the car sort of plopped itself into the right rear quarter panel of the 666 machine. So it might be a little bit of an investigation that is required in that one there for Devenish. I don't think that one is entirely a clear cut, half on, half off. I think there might be a little bit more to that.
Yeah, possibly just trying to have a bit too much of a bite at the inside there for Will, considering where he was at the start of the corner and all that. And to be fair, I mean, you don't need to make a move that early in the race. It was turn 1 of lap 1, and I think he was racing for 4th, just trying to recover from what is actually an atypical start for Will Devenish this season. He has historically been known for having very average starts, but for the most part, he's been pretty good this year. I think this is the first race in at least the last 6 months where his starts have been what he would categorise as rubbish.
Yeah, that's probably one of the worst ones I think we've seen from him all season long, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. They've been not too bad up until this point, but the demons have returned, and he definitely got a poor one there. And look, the contact's certainly not intentional. I don't think for any want of the imagination that he deliberately ran into Grossel. I just think it's a case of two cars trying to occupy a very, very similar bit of real estate, little bit close for comfort in terms of room, and one car's just taken a little bit too much curb, bounced into the other car. I don't think it's intentional, but it definitely is going to probably end up in the stewards' rooms after this one.
Absolutely. But
there's plenty of cars pitting though, Rhodey. That's what I'm looking at the background is shot at the moment, right? There's plenty of drivers that are coming in. So Pixel guys are all in. Wedding, Ross and Burke. Well, they were all down toward the back of the grid, so they've got nothing to lose here. Pitting under safety car, they're putting some tyres on. They're going to try and see if they can buy themselves a little bit of an insurance policy here. Given they're up the back, they've got nothing to lose. And see if they can tear through a few drivers that have stayed out on the track and pick up a couple of spots. Maybe be in a position where they're on the tail end of the top 10 and in position for the reverse grid.
Like, I also wouldn't be surprised. It's a little different. It's very much theoretically quite different. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is a similar strategy to what they adopted at Talladega in the 86ers for the social series, where they all decided that they wanted to stick together for the slipstream benefits, for all that sort of stuff. Granted, they can't pack together like they did in the 86ers because the damage was reduced so that we didn't impact the aero.
Dear.
They could back in together. Lewis, Wedding, just picked up a drive-through.
Yep, he's just leaving the lane right now, so he'll be done for pit lane speeding. So he's either been too fast entering or too fast exiting. I think it's probably the latter, not the former.
Yeah, it's
sorry,
not
the former,
not.
the former, not the latter.
Yeah, I know that it's a little bit confusing as to which line is the line on the way in to get breakdown for, but at the same time, that's you can kind of blame the line on that one, but at the same time, you don't really need to race a pit stop when you're under safety car. You can just take that safely. So that's going to sting, and yeah, it's not been Lewis like a night, obviously, so qualifying panned out for him, and then to kick into the race as well. He's got 3 races, so he can sort of reset and go again. He won't be able to re-qualify, but he'll set himself up for get some points in race 1, make a bit of a push through race 2, and hopefully sort of race 3 he might surface somewhere where he wants to be. But yeah, it's going to be a long night for Lewis Wedding.
Certainly is. Now the field's backing up here, so we're going back to full green flag conditions here. Safety car into pit lane. Egmanis has control of the field from Redmond, followed by Devenish, and then Brenton Foley's launched himself up into position number 4, so he's been a big beneficiary there, ahead of Brapp, who started in 3rd, and then picking up a couple of extra spots as well, as a 10-second stop-go penalty issued for Egmanis, but that will probably be waived by virtue of the fact that everybody is in order, and we are back to green flag conditions.
Yeah, so maybe just a little bit early jump there for Termo. I'm not sure what, maybe passing the safety car as it came into the lane. But yeah, for the moment, he's got away and actually got away very cleanly. A very solid jump there from Termo, from Curtis Egmanis. Moving up clear now of Tim Redmond, who's actually then pulling away from Will Devenish and Brenton Foley, who's very much trying to buy in on Will Devenish here.
Certainly is, a bit further back in the order there.
So he's actually, I'll say he was about to buy him, but he's backed out of it through the chicane. You can get a lot of moves done into the chicane. That's probably a really good spot to form those up by virtue of just being the braver guy under brakes. But at the moment he's backed out of that one. He's actually put himself in a position where he's now sort of impacting Brapp to a degree, but at the same time he's managing to drag Brapp along by virtue of the slipstream down these straights.
Yeah, that's the important bit. We haven't talked a lot about it apart from in qualifying, that there is a penalty to play, a price to pay if you are the lead car. You're getting up to sort of around 280 kilometres an hour in the slipstream by the time you get to turn 5. So there's quite a lot of time to gain, but if you're the preceding car, you're in good, but if you're the lead car, you just get overhauled, you just get the speed just goes up and up and up and up and up, and potentially there'll be a dive bomb coming if you're not too careful.
Yeah, no, so it's something to keep in mind of you very much to drive in your mirrors and keep an eye on what's behind you. If you're someone that's trying to make a pass, very much set yourself up either on the exit of turn 1 or alternatively through what I'm considering to be the bowl, which is I said turn 6, but I forget how NASCAR numbers themselves. But yeah, the long right-hander is a good spot because then you get a slipstream down that back straight, not quite as strong, But definitely turn 1, turn 2 is the spot you want to set yourself up for a move. The counterpoint, though, is you don't want to be right with someone's backside through 2, 3, and 4 because it's flat. Even with slipstream, it can be pretty close to flat. Also, you don't want to be too close in slipstream because it sucks all the air off the front aero for these cars, and that actually impacts quite strongly. And you really did turn it 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, you certainly do. So there is a move that's been made there. Devenish goes up back ahead of Tim Redmond, now sets his sights on the back of his teammate and in the slipstream, sets the fastest lap of the race while he's at it.
Yeah, so that's not quite as good as we're seeing in qualifying. We'll see there's this. Oh, he's got into the back of his teammate as well.
Yep, certainly has got into the back of his teammate as this live steward flashes up just to reset the penalties from restart there and put Lewis Wedding back on his course that he needs to serve that penalty. So Devenish continues on. Actually, Lewis Wedding has indeed served the penalty, so we've actually just been keeping an eye on things there. So that's actually going to be retracted. We just did notice he is out there on the circuit and is actually in the bus stop section. So that is going to be taken care of.
Cool, but just with how tight they were racing at the front there, that sort of offset Will a little bit in getting the back of Tomo. And I mentioned you don't be close to people because that will happen. In the end, what they've actually done is put Will back behind Tim Redmond and comfortably behind Tim Redmond, who is now trying to challenge for the lead of this race.
Certainly is. Here he goes down the inside, second last corner. He gives Termo a little bit of a nose to look at. Termo has to leave him a little bit of room, and now Tim Redmond can take the sweeping line in from the outside. So the crisscross manoeuvre put him in position for turn number 1, which is a very, very smart move to do. But then he's going to be in the slipstream or giving Termo the slipstream all the way up to turn 5. So he decides to back out of it, but now Devenish needs to cut onto his rear bumper and under the rear wing of the Mustang as they head up through the far section here. Avoid the curb on the right, avoid the curb on the left, and then you've got to avoid this little tiny curb on the right here as well. And Redmond's done that really well. In fact, most people in the top half a dozen spots have done that really well. And now the closing distance is not quite close enough though.
And also their battling is now bringing in Grapp and Foley and Noah Turra into this train as well.
Yeah, big group of 6 cars, followed by Steve Burko, who's the 7th car in the queue. He's all on his own sim at the moment, followed by Cox, Zach Brown, and Lockie Locke is the last man that's inside the top 10 at the moment. There's a really, really good scrap at the moment over the podium positions, taken care of by 6 cars. So drivers that are not committing to the moves at the moment. That's the important piece here. They're not committing to passing moves. They're looking and sizing up what their opponents are doing, assessing the strengths and the weaknesses. Where can I get off the corner a little bit better so I can get a better slipstream and be in a better tow for a dive bomb down the inside at 5?
Absolutely. One of those tracks where you start thinking not only a corner ahead or 2 or 3 corners ahead, and maybe even half a lap ahead with the way these guys are battling at the front. Just keep an eye on the timing screen as we mentioned the battle.
Ricardo. Oh, there's an accident. Sorry, there's an accident at the back of the field. So someone's gone around here. It's actually Higginson. So I was wondering what was going on. I was keeping an eye on the front group of cars. I'd actually just seen it looked like Ricardo has been in the lane.
He has, yes.
So I don't know what had happened there. And then all of a sudden I caught a glimpse of something going on at the back of the field, which was Higginson, who had moved his way up the order a couple of spots. He arrived on the scene out of the last corner, and had a massive tank slapper. Have a look at the evasive action there for Rutledge and for Palfrey behind.
Yeah, they were very lucky to, I think they were still trying to be 3 wide there. They're very lucky to all sort of, very much all sort of wobble as a group over to the other side of the track. But yeah, I think it's very easy to do that curve. It's a very, very sort of rewarding corner if you get the right line through there. But yeah, just wobbled out, touched the tyre barrier, sort of pinged the back end of the car back around on him. And that's put him down the back as well. He's still up ahead of Lewis Wedding and down Liccardo by virtue of Liccardo pitting. And Liccardo's about to be caught by the leaders.
Yeah, and this is the bit that I'm a bit bemused by at the moment as to why he came in. So he had a really poor, they're the safety car laps, but he had a really poor first sector on lap 6 and then came in immediately after. So he might have had too much damage. He may have either been turned or he's hit a wall or something's gone on there that's needed him to come in and make that stop. And now you're right, he's on the cusp of being lapped. In fact, he's got blue flags right now.
Yeah, actually, by virtue, it's actually somehow helping Termo because Termo's able to harvest stream off of him, which enabled him to pull away from Will Devenish and Tim Redmond. Will Devenish actually gotten back past Tim Redmond in the last minute or so as well. But yeah, it's actually helping Termo by virtue of Dane being where he is.
Yeah, puncture from a contact is what we're hearing from the pits from Hayden Cuppett, who's in the garage for the Outward Engineering backed car this round. So puncture from some sort of a contact for Dane Liccardo, and he had to make a pit stop. So that's unfortunate for him. as Zerma continues to lead Higginson in the pits as well. So there'll be a position gained for for Liccardo there going through. Take a bit further, a bit of a look down the rest of the field. Let's have a look at Lindsay Muddle. He's actually doing quite nicely. Starting in 14th, it's come out to 17th. Thrower sells in the dummy up the inside at the final corner. Can't make that stick.
Oh.
And then Lockie Locks he might have been the other party that was involved in the contact with Liccardo, because he's in 19th. And he had a very, very poor first sector on the last lap. So maybe he's had some issues as well. So a few drivers just starting to struggle just a little bit around this very, very fast and very, very tricky circuit.
Yeah, and Muddle's doing quite well for. He's done, I think, a sum total of it might be 2 starts from the Supercars, or two round starts from the Supercars. So I actually missed the Watkins Glen round for Dev Series, but set himself up as one of the few guys as with the open invitation to come and run in Supercars. He's doing pretty well, things considered, because I'm not sure what his previous running is with or without assist, but if he's running without assist, he's set himself up pretty well, and if he's running with assist, he's also doing very well to run without any in Supercars. But yeah, he's running with Pete Thrower and Lockie Lock, and probably about where he's expecting to run, because he was definitely not seeing the times alike in practice, and as a Dev Series runner, he's not expected to be doing so.
No, that's right, and it's all about being consistent and keeping out of trouble for the Dev Series guys. Exactly. That's what it is for their first rounds in Supercars. When they step up, it is a very, very daunting prospect, so just to keep yourself in a good stead. Hold high, but he's done that a bit wrong. He caught the grass. There goes Thrower and there goes Lock. That's all it takes, isn't it? That's just, unfortunately, a little bit of inexperience. Caught a little bit of the grass. The car brakes sideways. Great control to keep it pointing the right direction. Counter-steered immediately. Knew exactly what to do. Unfortunately, cost himself 2 spots, so he drops down to 19th place. We go back a bit further up the field, actually. There's a big heavyweight fight going on here for 8th, 9th, 10th. And 11th, and then you can see just behind them the 12th and 13th place cars. You have Scott Murrell and Brendan Ross. That is for the last spot that would be in the top half inversion if they can make that happen. So at the moment, down to Murrell and Ross as to who's going to start on pole and who's going to start in second place on the order. They could get a couple of extra spots if these lot at the front here keep fighting. Zach Brown continuing to sell dummies to Daniel Cox, and then you've got Steve Warwick, who's closing in on the back of that Murrell and Ross battle, and then Leonard Grossel, who's recovering. Don't count him out for a potential spot starting on the front row either if he can get himself together. There he is at the back of the shop.
Yeah, by virtue of the 23 drivers we've got in the server, full inversion would include 12th spot as pole. So Brendan Ross and Scott Murrell are fighting for pole for next race back there, and actually Steve Warwick's buying into this now as well. So I'm not sure how that's going to play out for Rossi. Then up ahead, Daniel Cox throwing a bit of a train, not quite the train to the strength of a Kemp or another train, but he's definitely doing his best with Zach Brown, Phil Boak and Lockie Burkle behind. Couple of very energetic races, different ages.
Here we go. Here we go. 3 wide, heading into the bus stop chicane. This doesn't end well. Burke gets board in there as well. He goes right around the outside. He tries to go around the outside of Boak and then be on the inside for the next corner. How did he make that work? I don't know. I'm not sure how he made that work, but he's going to come out the other side here, I think, potentially with 9th place on the running order, or actually 8th place on the running order, and he does.
I did
what a
mention
move!
The bus stop is all about who's got the biggest balls, and Berkey definitely trying to put his candidates in for that.
Check this out. Move. Check this out on the replay. So you had Brown, who was held out wide. He was the one caught short here. Boak and Cox, and then they made it 3 wide. And watch the two of them. So Cox backs out of it. Burke keeps his foot in it, stays right around the outside. In fact, I'm not sure if he left the track limits there or not. It was borderline if he did. And then Boak had no choice but to leave him the room. And at the end of the day, Burke gained 3 spots in a matter of about 6 corners.
Actually, I think it's all just come undone. Just seen Cox was out wide. I'm not sure whether the rejoin was forced or not, but he did end up rejoining the track and getting into Scott Murrell.
He's in a bad spot here at the moment as well. As the traffic starts to go past. So we will go back and have a bit of a quick look at this one as well, because there was a heavyweight slugfest brewing here, and it looks like Cox had a bit of a moment, actually locked a brake going down to turn number 1. So he was well wide and then out of commission. And when he rejoined, what did he do? That's not good. No, and he's rejoined straight into Murrell. So that definitely is going to be in a little bit of hot water for that. And then actually he had no choice. He couldn't stay where he was. He had to get off that corner. And then Thrower was lucky not to hit him coming through as well.
I think as well off all that, I can see him on track. I think he's thinking of a puncture result of all that as well because he's running very slow.
Yeah, he will sure for have a puncture after all of that as well. He's been battered from pillar to post. There he is. He's actually trying to avoid the roadblocks getting through that part of the course there, which he's done. So he's going to have to come in. He's going to be off the back of the grid as it sits right now for the next race. Back to the front of the field. It's now a 5-car group. Foley has lost touch with the tow here. There he is, the mellow yellow car, just back a shot. So he's settled for 6th place at the moment, pending what goes on in front here. It's down to Brap and the Mustangs. That's pretty much, I think, all we can say right now. Brap versus the Mustangs.
Yeah, which seems to very much, well, maybe not Brap being the other one in the picture, but seems to very much be how it's gone this year. A lot of strong drivers in the Mustangs. Someone wide there, that'll be Cox again, with that puncture trying to get back to the pit lane, so he's now lost a lap into the bargain, which is going to have done with a pit stop anyway. But yeah, Will Devenish was actually ahead of the Sigmatis, but within the last lap or so, Tomo picking up probably a bit of slipstream and getting a helping hand. Drive through for Nathan Higginson, I'm going to suspect that'll be for track abuse.
That will be for track abuse, so that's over and done with. Now, importantly, while this battle at the front goes on, you see Devenish up the inside here at turn number 2. So he goes through to the lead of this race on the penultimate lap. So he makes his move here, but it might be a little bit too early. I fear he's got tagged there by his teammate heading up through turn 4, so not what you wanted to unsettle the car. And Turmo goes round the outside here, super committed under brakes, wrestles the lead back from his teammate. He doesn't give a stuff about Devenish taking another race win. He wants one for himself. And with all the adversity he's faced over the course of the last couple of rounds, being battered from pillar to post, he wants to win.
Well, he's got a lap and a bit left to go, and yeah, you forget that these guys, and I think they've forgotten that they're supposed to be teammates. They're supposed to be the nicest to each other, to your teammates on track. But no, Tomo, yeah, that could have very nearly been a plane crash involving the both of them. And look, Tomo's got the acumen behind the wheel to make that not so. But sometimes, skill doesn't play into it. Sometimes luck is really what triggers it for you. We're now starting the last lap.
The bell lap sounds. White flag is out. If you want the NASCAR terminology, Tomo has got 3.9 kilometres to go. Brap's too wide at the first corner there, so he's now out of business. The top 3 might be settled. I think Noah Tara's just sort of dropped out of commission here as well. He's settled for the fact that he's now lost that toe and is going to rely on a mistake from this top group of 3 to have any shot at a podium finish here in this race. Where's Devenish going to make the move? He's probably going to make it at the end of the short chute down to the second last corner. That's the only real spot I can see this happening if he's going to wrestle the lead back. But Redmond is giving him what for? He's right under the rear wing of the number 15, so he might try and make a move of his own.
Yeah, I think Will's biggest problem right now is not getting to first, it's keeping second. Redmond's right there, and Redmond's been chasing for a win all career essentially within Supercars. He's not going to get a win, but he's definitely chasing for more podiums here. Going around the outside of Will, which turns into the inside, a bit of contact, but I don't think that was intentional. He's got back down the inside now. Will's going to run wide. Will's going to run a little bit wide here. Tim might just get there, but there's contact again.
We'll have to keep a look on that one, and it's over. But Turmo's going to win his first race in ASR Supercars, and he breaks the 9-race winning streak of Will Devenish in the process, his teammate. So a new man atop the race winners list in ASR Supercars. He finally gets the business done, and at the end of the day, Devenish was classified as the second place finisher by a fraction of a second. Look at it there. It wasn't very much on the timing screen, so he outlasts Redmond, but it might cost him a little bit more depending on what the outcome of the penalties are a bit later on in due course. So Devenish second as it sits right now from Tim Redmond, with Noah Tara settling for 4th, Brap 5th, and then Brent Foley finishing in 6th. It was a distant 7th for Steve Burko. We are getting there. Phil Boak in 8th place there. Zach Brown 9th, and then Brendan Ross, he managed to get inside the top 10, so that's a great drive from the rear of the grid. That's going to put him at 3rd place on the grid starting the next race. Second on the grid is going to be Lockie Burke, so a front row start, and then Leonard Grossel managed to overhaul Steve Warwick on the second last lap and wrestle away what will be pole position for the next race.
Well, that's a really nice inversion of fortunes.
Get your words together, Rody.
I've forgotten what the word is now, but in the inversion of luck, fortunes. There it is. For Leonard Grossel, after getting tipped out on the first corner of the first lap by someone who very much might be trying to live up to the Intimidator nameplate tonight, to then get back to what will be pole position, to then have the best chance possible of putting one over on Will Devenish in race 2.
And Steve Warwick drove really, really well after all of that. He had to throw out the defensive anchor a little bit there for Grossel, but he just didn't have the pace because Grossel had come in, he'd changed tyres, he'd started at the back of the grid, so the rubber he had was a little bit better overall than what Warwick had to fight with at the end of the day. So Warwick 13th on debut in a Ford, thank you very much. And then Murrell 14th, so he got tipped out a bit later in that as well. Everybody finished. The big loser out of that one, of course, Dane Liccardo and Daniel Cox. Those two drivers were the ones that sort of ended up in positions they probably didn't want to be by virtue of being in some contact. Lockie can probably put him there in 16th. He's been sort of a perennial top 10 runner all year long. And he unfortunately ended up with some contact too and had to take a bit of a tour through the pit lane, or he had to take a bit of a recovery drive in the process. So that is, I didn't think it was going to happen that race, Roddy. I was looking at it going, Devenish is on pole again. He's going to, if he gets a reasonable start, he'll probably have the guys in the tow, but he might be able to outlast them. But he just couldn't make his run in the last couple of minutes. It was unfortunate for him because Redmond gave him a little bit of something to think about in the final throws of that last lap, and that took all his attention away from challenging his teammate.
Absolutely, yeah. I agree. I was definitely had set in my head race 2 will be the one to get it, but I suppose it shows just the difference of racing that we're seeing at Watkins Glen. We saw this with Dev Series last week with Super 3 by virtue of the car, not by the pace, but a debutant as a wildcard getting a win ahead of Brap, this being Stuart McNichol, and then we saw just the strength of the racing across the field. It's a different sort of track with the reliance on the slipstream, reliance on the strategy, reliance on less the car pace, less the driver pace, even more just the ability to race, which I think we're seeing from some of the guys. By all means, Will is no spring chicken, but Tomo's also done a lot of racing over the years, both in Supercars, when he was in Dev Series, GT3, the Social Series, anything that you can sort of get into, Tomo's gotten into. So all that sort of racecraft sort of coming to the fore for him there. And I think we're seeing similar stuff to what you and I have both seen. I've experienced, not by virtue of being in it, but by being on track near it. And you've seen for years in Formula V, where you kind of don't want to be first coming onto the last lap or coming onto the back straight because the slipstream is quite that strong here.
Yeah, it is. Coming onto that run up the hill, heading up towards turn 5 is very powerful. We saw it from a few of the onboards that we'd had over the course of the race and through qualifying as well. It is a very, very powerful tow. But that's probably where a lot of drivers were probably expected to make the move, but Turmo just put his foot down and said, "No way, I'm defending this position."
Yeah, that was. I mean, it's not like Tomo's. Yeah, it's not like Tomo's never been one to get his elbows up and fight for a position. And I'm kind of surprised that he fought as hard as he did with his teammate. Although to be fair, they're not. As I said earlier, finishing order and all that by no means guaranteed. But they are pretty comfortably in the lead of Dev Series. No, sorry, Dev. Oh, my mind's throwing me. In the lead of the Teams Championship in Supercars currently. You wouldn't want to risk that by having a double DNF.
No.
Even with how potentially poorly things are going for Rossi and Lewis. And for reference, Rossi, I think, finishing 11th in that race, and Lewis finishing right down the back. But all means you don't want to open that up for them because, like we saw this with Dev Series last year, where the championships, at least with Super 2, wasn't really decided on the night. Super 2 was decided a couple of rounds before that, but it didn't really come into fruition until the night of Bathurst itself. Similar thing with, I think we've seen a few other battles before where, for example, Pixel could have had teams last year, except for what happened at Townsville, which had an effect on a title that wasn't decided for proper until we got to the last round at Pookie. So, yeah, I'll just say it's not like Tomo's not generally not a meek or a timid driver, but it's definitely more than I thought I would have seen. But look, when you're going for your first race win, by all means, you've got to pull out the big stops to get there.
You certainly do, and it'll be someone we'll be very, very keen to have a chat with after the night is over as well, just to get his thoughts on that, because we had a debutant on the podium last round as well, with Lockie Lock taking third place in race 2 at Barbagallo, and the theme has continued tonight with Termo being the next race winner in ASR Supercars, so adding his name to that illustrious honours board of being able to win a race. And as we said, in the process, breaking the back of the 9-race winning streak that has been going on since the beginning of the season for Will Devenish. So we don't need to have any more of that perfect season talk anymore. It had been a rumour that had been floating along on the wins for a handful of rounds now, ever since I think it was after Sydney, it was being talked about whether or not he could do it or not. This format has certainly thrown up the dice, and they've all fallen the way that they have.
I think it's not even the format so much as just the way the tracks played out for him, and the fact that Termo didn't want to let him have it.
That too.
Yeah, like by all means, Termo, like we've seen this with F1, we've seen this with a lot of championships where Termo could have been the number 2 driver if he wanted to be, but Termo doesn't want to play number 2. Termo wants to, if Termo has the opportunity to be the number 1 driver on the day, he'll be the number 1 driver on the day, and that's what that was. He could have very much been the tail gunner for Will and kept him and. Early it was Foley and Noah Tara out of the picture, but no, there was no call from the pit wall on the multi 21 or we must race the team to the finish. It was you're both individual drivers, have at it.
Yeah, and that's fair, isn't it? Like there's just no team orders. That's exactly what we saw. There's just no team orders, and it was great to see. Just hard racing right up until the very, very end. Even for Tim Redmond, throwing down the gauntlet late, he threw the gauntlet down there, ran a little bit wide. I think there might have been a little bit of minor contact there as well. And then they popped back onto the circuit, and then he raced Will right to the very last bit of the line as well. So there's still some good racing, I think, all the way up and down that field. And even for the beginning of that race, after the safety car went back in, we thought there might have been half a chance that it could have gone to any one of those top 6 drivers that were floating around at the front of the field. Even Brenton Foley, who was touring around in 6th place there, was potentially in the window to potentially wrestle away a race win, something that he hasn't had for quite some time. Unfortunately for him, it didn't materialise. He dropped out of that battle about 3/4 of the way through the race, and just one by one, those drivers just started to fall off the order until there were only 3 left.
Yeah, something interesting to note, and I've just been updating the points just so we got a rough idea, amongst other things, of who the round winners are going to, or the top 3 for the round are going to be. Although, based off pace, I think we've got a pretty good idea so far. And interestingly, talk about Mustang strength versus Holden strength. They are the same physics set this year, but by virtue of that last race, Tim Redmond, and to be fair, long time coming considering that he missed the first round. Has now moved himself up into the top 3 of the championship. He's just overhauled Rossi by the virtue of 10 points, by virtue of finishing 3rd versus 10th in that last race. But yeah, it's interesting looking at how this is playing out. Foley and I think Noah Tara also wants to make up a few gains in that last race. But we talked earlier about little things that will play big picture long term. We might see that now for Tim Redmond, now that he finally set himself up into 3rd. Maybe that starts to enable him to push. And also just tonight, the fact he's actually racing Will, and in this case Termo, more directly than I think he has in quite a while. Maybe we might see, I'd like to see it happen, and I'm going to find some wood to touch before I say anything about it, because I don't want to curse it. But one driver that's been waiting the longest for a win in Supercars is a man who finished on the podium in race 1. And he's in position to go for that win.
That's exactly right. Just keeping an eye on a couple of drivers that are just taking the option to go out there on the track at the moment. Steve Warwick one, Lindsay Muddle was the other one. He just actually went a bit too deep in the braking zone there at the bus stop chicane. And Nathan Higginson is the next man out onto the track, so he needs all the practice that he can get. Just having a little bit of a look at the running order here as well. Looks like, unfortunately, there's been some sort of storms or something happening in the area in New Zealand where Jacob Palfrey happens to be. He is unfortunately going to be out of this session. He would have been starting out of position 18 on the grid, so that means the drivers behind him move up one once the grid order is settled. So that's Wedding, Liccardo, Muddle, Higginson and Cox. They all come forward one spot, so there'll be 22 drivers for the next race. But that does not change the starting order for the next race. It does not change who is on the pole. It doesn't change who is alongside him on the pole either, because they are all determined based off of the results from race number 1, which of course there were 23 finishes, so that's how the order is worked out. We don't just take one off and then do the reset after that. So it's as it was. So as we said, it'll be Grossel off a pole with Lockie Burke alongside.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting. It's been a while since we've seen, and actually I think we just lost Lindy Muddle as well and all that, which is a shame. But if this does go ahead, it's the first time in a while that I think Berkey's seen been this far up the grid. He would have been what was Super 2 at the time. I know that I've been in conversations with a couple of guys, been in conversations with Dane this week, and he's reminded the opportunity to remember all the fun, all the trials and tribulations of the 2021 Super 2 title, the last time we ran just Super 2. But yeah, Berkey was fighting for that one. He was in the Walkinshaw car. And yeah, it's been probably since then that Berkey's seen the front row of a grid, at least in a supercar. I imagine he's probably popped up in some of the social series racing. I mean, I should know that. I run that, but I don't. The memory doesn't track quite as far back for some of that stuff. But yeah, first time in a while he's in a front row, and I think first time for Leonard. Well, I say first time for Leonard since Calder, really, where he's at the front in Dev Series. But yeah, it's an interesting opportunity for some of those guys you mentioned. Some of those guys start up towards the front. Other guys that are going to be up there as well. Brendan Ross up in 3rd, Zach Brown in 4th, Phil Boak in 5th. Rossi maybe isn't quite as much of a defensive specialist as his teammate Lewis Wedding would be. But he's still capable. He still knows where to position a car, so I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe a bit of a gap form between 2nd and 3rd as the race goes on. And then Zach Brown 4th, Phil Boak 5th. There's actually there's of that top 5. It's one of those weird things, and we talked to that. I think Rossi threw up the idea of it in the chat for the last round that there was a bit of an informal thing for Pixel and PBF, similar to what CRE and Beyond have going with the Sparky Showdown. And as things sit for this race, the top 5, it consists of only Pixel drivers and PBF drivers.
Absolutely.
The first CRE driver is sixth, is Steve Burko in 6th, and the first of the Kiwis is Tim Redmond in 10th.
Yeah, and that's what the inversion's going to do, isn't it? It's going to be one of those little things where there's an issue of the Tradie Showdown coming into play as the grid starts to form up here. So, first race over and done with. Race 11 of the championship about to get underway. Just a couple of drivers waiting to fill up the last couple of spots on the grid here. And I think we've got everybody on the grid as it sits right now, and we are about to get underway for formation lap as long as the things are underway. Yes, here we go. So Leonard Grossel leads them away, Rudy.
Yeah, so starting from pole for this race, Leonard Grossel for PBF here in CERN Rennsport. Definitely, as I said, his first podium in a couple of months. Starting alongside him is Lockie Burke, who's not seen the front row for at least a couple of years off of my math, but good to see him up there for XSP dealer team. Third is Brendan Ross, the first of the Pixel cars. He's done pretty well by virtue of seeing himself in the right spot in race number 1, with Zach Brown alongside him at PBF Engineering. 5th is another PBF driver in Phil Boak. That's, I think, the highest we've seen him since the heights of 2019 or 2020. With Steve Burke alongside him in 6th, he's got a good spot to start from there. Brendan Foley in 7th, with Brad actually behind him in 8th, so that's all 4 PBF drivers in the top 8, which I don't think I've seen in a long time. With Noah Turret in 9th and Tim Redmond in the top 10, but crucially ahead of Will Devenish and Curtis Egmartis, who are 11th and 12th. 13th is Steve Warwick, just missed out on jumping in there, but still a good run for him in race 1. Some good fill-in teams points for him in Cheese's car. with Scotty Murrell in 14th, filling in for NZ Snipes. Cheese and Snipes both at the Warriors game tonight, which is why they're not on track. 15th is Cam Rutledge for Sarah Anson Motorsport. He had a pretty good run, fairly quiet run in all things considered, but he kept out of trouble in race number 1. With Lockie Lock in 16th, who we saw off a little bit early, so he's probably got a few spots to make up off of this race start. 17th is Peter Thrower for Beyond Racing, pretty good, fairly quiet racing as well, but good strong call of points. With Lewis Wedding in 18th, he's still got a point to prove after qualifying and race 1. Dane Liccardo starting out at 19th, he was doing well early, but he did also pit early off of a puncture, so he's got a bit of a fight on. Lindsay Muddle in 20th, back into the race again for race number 2. Nathan Higginson in 21st, and Daniel Cox, the back of the grid, starting from 22nd after his calamities at the back end of race number 1.
There we go. That's your grid for race number 2 as we get set with the first couple of drivers there sitting on the grid, just waiting on a few more at the back of the field, just those last couple of cars that came round the final corner. 22 in total for this one. And might be 1 or 2 drivers slightly out of position here. There we go, all reset. Let's go racing stateside again. Race 11 of this year's Supercars Championship. Reverse top half of the field round. And off we go this time. Grossel with a very good start. Already a couple of cars in the fence in the back of shot. Rutledge and I think it was Higginson were the 2 cars that grabbed the pit lane fence and made a meal of it. Still 4 wide. Very, very deep in the field with Grossel going clear there. Burko's out in no man's land. So too's Daniel Cox. They've gone right past the curbs and right around the backside as Grossel streaks away at the head of the field. And then look at this log jam. Massive, massive log jam coming up the hill, with Igmanis in there ahead of his teammate. Noah Tara's dropped back a little bit. Redmond's gained a couple of spots as well. So it's mixing it up in the middle here.
Yeah, Will Devenish currently the worst performing off the start of that top 3. But he's actually going to gain a spot now.
Oh, Burko gone.
Wide again.
He'll have to feed back on quite nicely there. He was too deep into turn 1 and somehow managed to thread the needle through the traffic and avoid hitting anybody. And he's lost a ton of spots out of that as they head down the short chute towards the second last corner for the first time in this second race.
It's also opened the gap quite measurably between the 3 of them, and I think at this point the focus for Tim Redmond and Termo, even against racing each other, should be trying to pull away from Will Devenish because he is quite strong, as we saw in race number 1. Currently they're lining up now to have a look at Brapp, but Brapp is part of the train, which includes Boak, Brown, and Foley and Ross. And actually Lockie Burke now the head of that train as well, with Leonard Grossel now streaking away. Yeah,
it looked like it was both Igmanis and Redmond grabbed Brapp on the run down into turn 1, and now they're sort of tucked in behind this little group of cars heading up the hill. Oh, it's wide for Brendan Ross. Was there some contact from his former teammate there, Brenton Foley, who slides the car up in front of the Pixels Motorsport machine there. I had to get the words out.
Yep.
Going up through turn 4. That was a bit of a wild ride for Ross, who grabbed the Armco heading through that part of the track. All the meantime, I was keeping an eye on behind because, as I said, it was the likes of Redmond and Igmanis who grabbed Brapp at turn number 1 and then set their sights on the back of the queue. And then Phil Boak's the next one that they've got their eyes on, and Zach Brown, but there's no way through this rolling roadblock heading down to the second last corner.
Yeah, at the same time that you were jumping, Ross and Foley were up there, I was jumping at Tim and Termo because there was contact that was nearly wheel to wheel as they turned into turn 4. And I've been there before in Dev Series, and that's a surefire way to kill a car. So I'm surprised both of them survived. But yeah, currently trying to process through on Zach Brown, who's got his own little battle here going on with Phil Boak, who must be getting a bit of a nosebleed for how high up he's still running. But yeah, it's currently Will Devenish back there in 11th, still fighting with Noah Tara, who's not giving up anytime soon. Tim Redmond now through on Zach Brown, and Termo looking to fire through as well, and possibly Brapp with the speed as well.
Wondering if there was maybe a little bit of a hip check there for Termo, because his car changed direction very, very suddenly, and now it's going to be a 3-wide fight. Termo was the demon on the late brakes earlier on in race number 1, and later again, and he does it this time around as well, and gets the 2 PBF machines there with the old Oscar liveries splashed all over them.
Yeah, it was interesting to see just Zach and Brapp battling, because they've never actually seen a grid together, I think, for this year, because they've been a fill-in driver one for the other, but they're getting a good little battle on, and crucially their battling is helping Tim Redmond and Termo try and pull away even more from Will Devenish, who's still stuck behind Noah Tara, who's doggedly trying to hold on for 10.
Noah Tara had to have a bit of a wake-up call there at the big sweeping right-hander because he was turning down late for the corner and Devenish was there and he checked it very early and was actually a little bit out of control and somehow managed to keep that spot ahead of Devenish, but he's coughed it up now as Devenish gets the move done down the front straightaway, moves up to position 10. So it's taken him 3 laps to advance 1 spot.
Yeah, he's not having a time of it as opposed to Egmanis and Redmond, where Ross wide at turn 1. I'm not sure we've got assistance.
Oh, it's on here. It's on here at the front of in third place to field. There's a rolling cork in a champagne bottle here with Lockie Burke. All sorts of sideways up the hill with Phil Boak all over his rear hammer. Boak goes through into position number 3. Look at this lineup of cars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 cars I'm counting in that last frame of shot there. From Boak all the way back to Scott Murrell.
Yeah, Scott Murrell buying into the back of this as well for, I think, what is it, 13th or 14th? No, actually 12th.
He's 12th at the moment.
But he's the last trainer in the queue, and he's got an probably slightly enviable position where he can see all these cars. He's got to avoid all these cars, and they're racing for sheep stations here on lap number 4. Yeah,
this is the view from Scott Murrell's Ford at the moment. Just look at it. There's just a wall of cars, just 2 by 2 by 2, heading down the front straight. He's just looking at them going, can someone please run into each other so I can have a couple of positions? That's what's going on inside that machine right now. I can bet your bottom dollar, Rhodey, and he'll probably hate me. He'll probably hate me later for trying to mimic that little voice of his, but I'm probably right.
And I was just watching the battle between Brendan Ross and Lockie Burke teammates, which actually opened the door for Tim Redmond and for Turbo.
Oh, there's contact! Rossi. And Ross is gone! Ross is gone! He's in the fence, and he somehow keeps it away from the PBF Motorsport machines there as well. And Ross is nose into the fence, and he just has to wait. That's all he can do. He just has to wait and grab reverse. Oh, dear. So that was brewing. That was brewing. And it was brewing for some time. Let's have a look at it here up the hill. So Redmond had got the job done. Redmond was clear. And he left plenty of room for Ross. And then it was Turmo. It was Egmanis who tried to split the gap going into turn 4 and makes the contact.
Yeah, so I suspect Turmo might be in a bit of trouble for that one.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
It wasn't so much of an action of trying to get Ross out of the way. It's just that Turmo was trying to very much keep up with the sort of pace that we were seeing out of actually a safety car. Yeah, it's a safety car, and I know what, and I know what. No, it's more than that. I know what's happened. It's actually for Scott Murrell because there was some other items going on here, and just while I was watching Ross recover, I saw Murrell in the pit lane fence of all things. Like he was in the end of the pit lane fence, so I don't know what's happened here. So here we are on the replay looking down at the final couple of corners. So Murrell all on his own. There was some contact there between Burke and Noah Turra, and Murrell's lost it all on his own, tried to save it. He's in the wall, so he's done it on his own, and then Muddle straight into the fence behind him, and that's what's triggered the safety car. 2 cars in that last couple of spots there. So two incidents, all of their own right, just on their own volition, no contact from anybody else, and resulting in another safety car. So for Murrell, he's out. That's for Muddle, he's also out. Burko was out on lap 1. We didn't see that, after lap 1 rather, we didn't see that. So he didn't get much further after the completion of the opening lap. So a little bit of carnage here at Watkins Glen in race 2. Yeah, I was just trying to have a look back, see how Will managed to get himself up to 6. It was just through hard racing. He managed to process through Rap. We obviously finally got past Noah Turra and all that. But this will be interesting, Roddy, very quickly, because here comes a race leader, and Brendan Ross is touring down the pit lane. So is he going to be lucky enough to avoid going a lap down here? No, he's not. So untimely stop for Brendan Ross, and he comes out in the queue. So that's not gone according to plan for Ross. He probably needed, actually, he's trying to take the bait there. I think, look, he's done the right thing. He probably had some damage and needed to come in and fix it from the instant inside into the wall up here. So that part I get, but probably needed to wait an extra lap to do it, catch up to the back of the queue, and then he would have had all the time in the world to then get in, get the job done, and rejoin the back of the grid. As it stands right now, he is lapped and not going to be making any further positions in this race. Yeah, just looking at the live chat, Burko and Team Engineer had a couple to both confirm that Burko was having pedal issues, which is why he was out early. which is a shame, but he has got that fixed, so he should be good for race number 3. And yeah, entering position now with Ross in the queue where he sits, and as something that I haven't said, I don't think it's ever been said, actually, honestly, even when we were doing quite strongly. PBF top 3.
At the moment, PBF top 3, you are spot on. I was just keeping an eye on all the cars that just came into the lane on top of Brendan Ross there. So Burke, who was running as high as 3rd as one stage, has come out back in 13th. So he was the first of the cars to properly stop. Lewis Wedding behind him, he came in. So too did Steve Warwick and Lockie Lock. So they were down the order anyway. Daniel Cox, who started rear, is moved up from 22nd to 17th. So he's in 17th. And then Rutledge was the other car that was in there as well. So he's fallen through the order a little bit since the drop of the green flag. So only at the half distance marker. That's the important piece of the puzzle here. Safety car comes out virtually right on half distance and is going to set up a rather interesting finish here, I think, Rady, because the drivers that are from 13th on back, so Burke, the next target for him is actually Nathan Higginson and Peter Thrower, and some fresh rubber on board. He might be able to make a little bit of headway.
Yeah, with where it's come, I think pitting is not as bad of a call as it might suggest, especially with how far they've actually ended up in the train by virtue of how many guys have pitted. Yeah, the interesting bit for me is, yeah, it's going to be interesting how this plays out from here, because it's very much hurt Grossel and actually it's hurt Foley more by virtue of where Ross has popped out, because he's got that calamity to deal with now potentially for the race start. He's going to try and get a good start, but also Rossi's there, he's going to try and get out of the way.
Well, it's an interesting dilemma for Ross though, Rody, because he's going to have fresh rubber. He's going to be able to make pace, so he's got to try and figure out if he can get in front of Grossel at the restart and pull away. He doesn't have to cough that up, but if he can't pull away, he's going to be obligated to get out of the way for the faster cars, as you know, if he's going to be to the point of impeding them. So that's the bit we're going to have to keep an eye out for. That's how the blue flag rules work. If you've got the blue flags, you've got to be able to pull away to clear that blue flag in order to maintain your pace on your position on the track. Otherwise, you have to concede. And given the lash up that's sitting behind him at the moment, he'll either be get going or give it up.
Yeah, I think I made the decision fairly early, but yeah, just with where that puts Foley, and then also where things are at now for Berkey. He's actually done a very strong job in their valuable battle with Berkey, but he's sort of got a different animal now. He's got Tim Redmond right behind him, who's got Termo, who's got Will, as I mentioned, who got very lucky with where the safety car came out that he wasn't buried behind more cars. So that train is actually back together again, but they've made up, I think, what is that, made up 8 spots in the process. Yeah, it's really, I very much like that, obviously some bias in play, I very much like that Foley and Boat keep their positions in all this, but I really think they're more going to function as an interference method to help Grossel. Because if he can pull away again off the start, and pull away to the point where he breaks slipstream like he did off the race start, then it might really not matter too much how good the tyres are on the Pixel cars and how strong Will's pace is, because a lot of the pace around here is being in the train. And if you're creating your own train out front, then people can't get to your train. No. And so really, if he can get a strong start, it's almost going to be Lance race to lose.
That's right. Well, we've gone to safety car condition. We'll have a look at some of the big movers and shakers at this point in time. So Nathan Higginson up 9 positions. So that's an equal high with Dane Liccardo. So that's how they've moved up the field. They've a bit of attrition. Also, a number of drivers that have come in ahead of them and taken service under the safety car has helped their cause as well. So they are the equal highest in terms of positions gained in all of this. In terms of positions lost as well, it's Brendan Ross at 16. That's where he currently sits at the moment. That's not through any fault of his own. The drivers that are in the wall or that are D and F are also the same thing. Lockie Burke is the next one after that. He's lost 11 spots, but of course he has stopped. So that's something that needs to be considered. And then the other one that's lost a couple of spots is Zach Brown, who started up in 4th, and then he's fallen down to 9th, but he's still inside the top 10. So he'd be the next one if you excluded the drivers that have either had contact, that was no fault of their own, or have come in and taken stock under the safety car.
Absolutely, and Zach's going to be he's in a good spot at least, because he's part of the train, and to be fair, they're all part of the train now. It's going to be a sorry, a 19 car, 18 car train. Well, 19 car, Rossi's in there. He's just, I'm not sure where he's going to be in there, but a 19 car train. It's just going to be how this train then breaks up again, like we saw at the start of the race. And I'm not sure if we're coming in yet.
I think we might be.
I think we are.
I think we might be.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, so
yep.
Race start coming up this lap.
All right, 7-lap club sprint coming up here for the second race win at Watkins Glen. The second car in the queue is a lapped car. It is Brendan Ross. So it is Grossel from Foley, from Phil Boak and Tim Redmond and Curtis Egmanis, the top 5. As we go back to racing here, what does Ross decide to do? This will be the key piece of the puzzle here. Has he got pace to overhaul Grossel and clear out? That's the real question that we have. What's the rubber like under that 888 Pixel Racing Team machine? Oh, there's a car already gone around at the restart there. It's Peter Thrower. He's gone around off turn number 1, so he's going to lose a couple of positions out of the queue.
Oh, and we're seeing in the back actually already the battle with Phil Boak. He's got Tim, actually he's already been processed by Tim Raymond, just got back to that. And Rossi, I think, very much trying to get a wriggle on here.
Yeah, he's thinking about it.
To move on at Grossel.
He's thinking about it. Also a bit further back as well. Liccardo having a bit of a look down the inside of Zach Brown at the inner loop chicane. He's got that done. So Liccardo has got some pace to burn under the number 11 machine, and he gets that done because he knew that Burke was going to be coming. And Burke's done the same thing. He's gone under the number 2 PBF machine of Zach Brown at turn 10.
So yeah, maybe just not quite in the headspace for a start. Zach Brown maybe just getting a little bit outclassed by the guys around him. Tim Redmond now looking at the back of Foley, very much very much had to move there and had to get out of it just because he was going to cause contact. This is actually checking up the little battle now with Curtis Egmanis and Will Devenish. They're trying to go 3 wide here into turn 1. I don't think, no, he's going to commit to it.
Oh, that's very, very tight as well. Egmanis tried to stick his nose in there a little bit too late, and it was Redmond who was already committed to the move. Foley had left him the space. He didn't realise there was another car that was there, and Redmond now has to go the long way around. Foley has to use the curb to give Redmond some room. That then gives a bit of room for Egmanis, who just seizes the opportunity with both hands, and now he's all over the back of Redmond like a cheap suit, heading down towards the bus stop chicane. And is he going to go around the outside? Not
Boak.
This time. Boak gets a move done around, has lost a couple of spots as well. He's now picked off Brent Foley. So too has Will Devenish.
Yeah, Boak picked off the both of them actually in the corner. They were squabbling, trying to do a bit of a you first, and Boak just went, well, screw you guys, I'll go first, and dived through on the both of them. But yeah, this is actually, what this is going to check the train up. So actually, this is very much, we're still 4 laps to go, obviously. But yeah, this is buying things. This is very much helping the cause of Tim Redmond and Curtis Egmanis and interfering with the cause of Will Devenish, because he had to just pass Phil Boak for the second time.
Yep, so Devenish goes through to 4th place, so there's still a bit of time for him to get onto the podium here. It's Redmond and Egmanis ahead of him, and then Ross is still sitting in the wheel tracks of Leonard Grossel, so he's trying to see if he can potentially get himself back onto the lead lap at a later stage here. Down the inside again, Liccardo has to make a move here on Noah Taro. Taro, who was wide at turn number 1, so Liccardo up to 7th place. He continues that charge. There's nothing wrong with the cars that did not stop under the safety car. They have still got some reasonably good pace at the moment. But for Liccardo, every position important, because here comes Burke. He's now going to try and pick off Taro, who's going defensive, nearly got fed into the Armco as a result. That Mustang twitched violently, heading up the back straight towards the inner loop chicane.
Yeah, the race, we mentioned how strong the race at the front is, but the race at this mid-pack is there's definitely some cheap stations to play somewhere in all of this. Case of beer, I don't know what they reckon is on the line here, but yeah, definitely some hard racing. Liccardo is just starting to break away from this now with Lockie Burke back there, and Lockie Burke was up for the lead at one point there, so and he's obviously processing back through with those fresh tyres, but I think the up to 8th with, 3 or 4 laps left to go. I'm not sure he's quite there. He has got the strong pace through these slower corners though, where the tyre life definitely comes into it more than the aero impact. Best lap there for Termo, who is buried up the backside of Tim Redmond.
And Ross now gets out of the way from behind the 666 machine as well, as Burke continues to have a look down the outside at Dane Liccardo. Ross got out of the way and realised that the faster cars needed priority to challenge for the lead here, so it was a bit short-lived that Grossel could not pull away at any great rate because he's been caught by Redmond and being caught by Egmanis. So Burke, we're looking at this battle here, Burke, and then you've got that Wedding in there as well. Liccardo, all sorts of defence and offence at the same time. It's going to end in tears if you're not too careful at the moment. as they go through the inner loop chicane again. And then Wedding's picked off a couple of spots here as well, so he's having a good run as well, having started down in 18th place, big beneficiary of all the drivers that came in for the stop and the drivers that were in the fence.
Yeah, he's buying into this quite nicely. He's obviously just got past on Noah Tara, who, as mentioned, another one that was in the fight for the lead at an early point of this race. He's now going to very much come up on Burke and Ricardo. These guys
big liberties with the track limits.
At one point.
Big liberties with the track limits heading out to get Burke. Would have got a track strike for that. And he's now gone through into 7th place. He can set his sights on the back of the mellow yellow machine of Brenton Foley for 6th. So the cars that stopped are making some good progress, but they needed to make the progress a couple of laps ago. Lewis has gone too far. He's on two wheels. He's nearly rolled it going through turn number 1.
That's impressive. I didn't think that.
Meanwhile, there's been a change for the lead. Redmond's gone through to the lead here, ahead of Grossel with Egmanis and Devenish in tow. So this is not over yet. You've got 2 drivers vying for their first win in ASR Supercars at the head of the queue. You've got the man in 3rd place who just got his first win about a half an hour ago, and a seasoned veteran who's looking to chalk another one up on his winner's card, all going for the race win here with just 2 and a little bit laps to go.
I will note as well, not that it might not come to anything, but I mean the next car in the queue is someone who hasn't won Supercars for coming up to 1,000 days plus. If anything goes wrong with his front 4, Phil Boak is well set to pick up a few results here. But the way these guys have been racing so far tonight, I don't think that's going to be an issue. Yeah, there is Boak, number 46, City Chevrolet machine, ahead of his best friend in Brent Foley, and then Burke, who's just picked off Foley. He'll grab another spot here. He's having a stellar run after coming into the pits. So right call from the Fuchs HSP dealer team cars and the Pixel cars, making great progress through the field. Burke up to 6th place, and that's where he's going to be starting if he can for the next race. If not, he can get one more spot. He'll be starting 5th on the opposite side of the same row that occupies grid position 6, and he's really charging. Here he goes. Have a look at this. Just watch the closing speed. Heading down to the inner loop chicane, you can see the car's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, but you've just got to be a little bit closer coming up the hill. And so much more speed through the inner loop chicane, just so much more lateral grip for the 244 machine as he goes into turn 9. Takes the tight line through here. Boak looks for the late apex, but it's been filled by Burke, and that's the job done, I would say. Unless Boak wants to try and hold tough on the inside here, Burke will hang around the outside. Boak actually concedes really late. Oh, I'm just looking at in the background, and Ricardo trying to make all sorts of moves on Brendan Foley. Brendan Foley's on the grass off the long right-hand hairpin, and actually Noah Tara's buying back into all this as well. We've started the last lap though, when up in the lead, Will Devenish has got past Leonard Grossel, so he's got a lap to try and do something to Tim Redmond. He certainly has. Redmond has got a little bit of an air margin though to Will Devenish. That's very, very important. Devenish is not close enough to threaten up here at the bus stop chicane, so if he's going to do it, he's going to have to throw it all on the line through the chicane, try and close the margin down, and then have a go in the last couple of corners like he was trying to set up to do at the end of race number 1. So no passing opportunity here. Redmond safely through the chicane. Devenish does throw it all on the line. He closed the margin down a little bit. The margin is more than halved. It's virtually gone. And now he looks for the late apex through the last couple of corners here. Redmond needs to throw the defensive boots out now. He needs to just drive it straight down the left-hand side of the track, make Will go to the right, and that's precisely what he's doing. He leaves him enough car space and not much more. 2 corners to go, but Devenish is now in position here. He's on the outside here, and then is he going to snatch the win away from Redmond at the last throw of the dice? I think he might have done it. Higginson's in the way, and Redmond's just going to come up 2 corners short of a race win in ASR Supercars. What heartbreak for the 43 driver, and I think collectively in the box here, the hearts have just sunk because we know that was very, very close to another first up win in ASR Supercars, and Redmond did everything he possibly could, and he just came up 2 corners short. Timmy's been trying his hardest ever since he started racing with us back in 2020, and like, I mean, it's not like he's never been in the fight for it before, but that was definitely, that definitely would have been his. That would have been the crowning glory. That would have been beautiful, but still, in the end, 2nd place, and so hard fought for in the end, behind Will Devenish. Leonard Grossel still holds on to 3rd. Crucially, that's second coming for him after how race 1 went. He's back in the picture now for race number 3. Curtis Egmanis comes home in 4th. It's not a win, not a podium, but still a very strong result. Definitely puts him in a good standing for the round as a whole. Lockie Burke got up to 5th in the end.
Great
got
drive.
through on Phil Boak, who still held on to 6th, as did Foley in 7th. Definitely the highest we've seen from those guys in a while. So this format definitely throwing up some variety tonight. Noah Turra in 8th, good strong result for him as well. With Zach Brown in 9th, fell late, but very much benefiting from the inversion to set himself up there. And Brat home in 10th, so still all five PBF cars, in the top 10.
There certainly are balance of the field here. Lockie Lock up to 11th place, so he started 16th after all of that. Liccardo 12th, so he faded very, very late in the piece there by virtue of his tyres going off. Wedding 13th after that catch at the final corner. And then from Cam Rutledge in 14th, he made up a spot. Cox made up 7 positions at the end of the day, so he's going to try and advance a few more before the end of this race. From Ross in 16th, then you had Higginson and Thrower, the last 2 classified finishes. Steve Warwick actually dropped out just not too long after the safety car went back in at the end of lap 12. And then you had Murrell, Muddle and Burko, the last 3 drivers that actually did not finish the race. But what a chaotic race. What a chaotic race, Roddy. That's the only thing I can probably say to that.
Like it's not like we've never had good racing in supercars, but I wish we could go back to Watkins more.
It's certainly throwing it up, isn't it? And I think it's throwing up the argument for more reverse grid races, isn't it?
Oh, it is, because these guys, I think these guys have proven in this race, and granted, it was only a top half, but I mean, we don't have to go any further in the top half if we don't want to, that they can be trusted to do this and not cause calamities. And like, it's not the only race that we've had at any point where I've been commentating where I've had just nervous excitement and shivers. But even as you mentioned, we sort of got let down, or it was sort of a heartbreak for both of us the way that race ended at the front. But there was just so much energy in that race, and like it's really good racing because it means that we in commentary can feed off that energy and bring the energy back into it and just snowball that energy into the race commentary. Whereas you have some races that get a bit stale and then we have to carry them and it gets a bit of a long, it gets a bit long, it feels a bit long. This is going too quickly. And I want more of this. Granted, Watkins is part of it. Granted, the reverse grid is part of it. I want more of this year. Even if it means that we're still in a situation where, Will does his best to clean sweep the championship. If he's going to earn it, that's even better.
Yeah, I was about to say, and you've just had probably one of your first rants of the year, I think. Then you just basically
a rant, but
a bit more than a rant. You've turned around and basically said, "This is what I want," and I'm standing on my fence, and I'm not going to go anywhere until I get it.
Well, yeah, it's to be fair, there are some drivers that were very much don't have that feeling after that race. Brenton Ross, one of them, and that was unfortunate the position he ended up in, and we might probably see some fallout for that one. But it was just really, really good racing, and to be fair, I'm getting that same energy, and I'm finding all the energy that I missed out on from Dev Series last week, where I had the pace to be in the top 5, but would I end up there at any point? No, I wouldn't get to the top 10. But it's just such a different form of racing. It's just so much energy in this. We can't do this every week because we'd be dead in commentary, and the guys in the series would be dead halfway through. But I want more of this. This is addicting. This is a high, and I want more of it.
It's definitely brought something different to ASR Supercars this year. That's what I think the intention was to do, was to bring something different to the round. And I think it was more from the point that once we saw what track was voted in by all the drivers from the track vote, because you remember this was not only the supercars drivers, this was the development series drivers that had a hand in this vote as well. They all had an opportunity to come up and decide what track they wanted to vote for. They offered their suggestions. The admin team weeded out all the ones that were not going to be suitable for supercars racing. The rest were put on the table. I think it was about 5 or 6 total. And then the vote was cast out. Watkins, it took a long time. It took virtually all of the votes, or almost all of the votes, to decide what the winner was going to be, because it could have gone either way for a little bit. I think it was down to it was down to Watkins, and I'm not sure if it was either Monza or Imola. I can't remember which one of the two that was second in the running order, but it was very close for a long period of time. And then it was decided that it was going to be Watkins, and then the vote went down to, all right, which Watkins do you want? Do you want the long one or do you want the short one? And it turned out to be the short one.
Yeah, and I'm not saying we've heard racing this good at the full ladder Watkins, but it's too much of a conventional track, if that's a way of putting it. That we would have seen the standard supercars racing I think we've seen this year, which is not it's not like it's unexciting racing, but it's not this, and it's just as I mentioned, it's not car speed, it's not driver speed to a point. Yeah, there's probably some setup wizardry in there. I know that. There was an informal thing going around in Dev Series where you had to be on the wacky bars, which, to be fair, isn't really wacky when you actually get down to the numbers of it, but it's different to what you'd run normally. But that was worth a capable amount of time. In talking in Dev Series, turning traction control off was worth half a second just by virtue of having 10 less kilos in the car, because apparently that made a big difference. It's just different racing that we're just not used to seeing. And a lot of it comes into the driver. And as I said in race one, and we saw some of it in race two as well, it's the Formula V strat. It's all about, doesn't matter how good your car is. We've seen this, you and I have both seen this with Davin Field and his old, Spectre or whatever it is. But his car for Formula V is from the 90s compared to cars that were built, a couple of years ago. The Sabre 02s, the new Jacers, and he's still capable of putting up on the podium at places like Phillip Island, just because it's not about car pace. It's not necessarily solely about driver pace, but it's ability to put a race car where a race car needs to be to finish strongly.
That's exactly right. And I mean, I know for the record that car actually was actually sold off to, I think the Beechams took it at one stage. It was being piloted by Brandon Taylor, and I think Gavin Stubbs, was in there at one stage as well. So I know the car you're talking about, and it's one of those cars that's from some time ago, but you're right. Simple case of learning how to put the car in the right position when you need to put that car in that particular position. That's as simple as it is. If you tuck, especially like Phillip Island, you tuck into the slipstream of another car, they're going to tow you around the circuit. You're going to be in a position to have a red hot go at it at some point. You don't need to be a genius or have the fastest car to feature at the front. You just got to be smart about it sometimes. You just got to understand what the game is and how to play it properly.
Absolutely. I'd love to keep with my rant, but I'm going to have to get some water, because the way this race is going, I'm going to be out of speech come the end of race 3. So I will be back in a minute.
Right, well, we're going to let you go and get some water for this one. We've got about 1 minute and 30 odd seconds left in this little short practice session before race number 3 of the night, which is the 12th race of the championship. So while Rhodey is away, we'll have a very brief look ahead to the rest of the calendar as it sits right now. So 3 weeks from now, July the 21st, it's the first trip for ASR Supercars to the Bend. We're going to be using the West layout. It's a new track that's featured in ASR this year. It wasn't quite ready for the GT3 Championship a couple of weeks ago, but Winton was the admirable replacement for that track. So we've left that one alone, but the West layout should be another great round, and it actually returns to the 350 kilometre sprint race format. And then after that, August the 11th, Reed Park Street Circuit in Townsville is a 2-race format, the 90 kilometre races. There is a top 10 shootout after qualifying, and there is a progressive grid for race number 2. And then the last round before we get into Enduros is the 25th of August, so it's actually a shorter turnaround between rounds 7 and 8, with Hidden Valley at this stage on the radar to come in for August 25th. That's actually another brand new track that's being developed in ASR ranks at the moment. There is some rumour that Hidden Valley may potentially be pushed back to a latter round in the year if it's not ready in time. In that case, it looks like it would swap with Simmons Plains, so Hidden Valley would move to round 10 and Simmons would come forward to round 8. So we will see how that pans out. So as it stands right now, the next 3 rounds before Enduros are the Bend on the July 21st, Townsville on the 11th of August, and at this stage, Hidden Valley on the 25th of August, subject to final circuit homologation. If it's not ready, then it will be Simmons Plains on the 25th of August. Time goes to 0. I can hear that Rhodey has returned with his water, so we are now set to go into the final race of the night. Been a little bit of a longer night than usual. It's 10 o'clock here, Eastern Australian Standard Time. which means over in New Zealand it is midnight. Usually we are very, very close to being finished by now, but it's been the slightly longer race format and a couple of safety cars to boot. Probably hasn't helped the cause too much.
It's probably also been well, not atypical to have a couple of have a restart in here or there, but just some of the setup stuff has crumped as well. But that said, we've actually run pretty smoothly, all things considered, in terms of from an admin point of view. The night's been running very smoothly.
Running fairly smoothly, and for a slightly longer format, I think it was a little bit experimental, given that the faster nature of the circuit probably warranted a slightly longer racing laps and lap count anyway. But it does mean that it adds probably another 20 minutes of overhead to the night's proceedings. So 20 more minutes hopefully on the clock to finish out the final race of this 5th round of the ASR Supercars Championship, which is a record 13 rounds for the very, very first time this year. Not a record number of races, but just a record number of rounds. And this year, for the first time as well, Enduro Cup featuring as a mainstay for the series and counting towards series points. So that's something we'll need to be digesting probably over the next couple of weeks, as well as who's going to be paired with who for Enduro Cup. For Super 2 drivers that are watching, you might want to start talking to your Supercars counterparts about a race seat. Here we go. Grid for the final race of tonight.
Alrighty, so starting from pole is Will Devenish, who at this point I think has the honours for the round, but is the first time all season he has not got all the wins for the round by virtue of the work by his teammate. Starting second is Kim Redmond, still chasing that first win, oh so close, 2 corners away, and if it was going to come anywhere, it would have to come surely at the track which features its national flag on the bonnet. Third is Leonard Grossel, strong result from him in race 2, very good reset for him that he can now battle on in race 3. With Curtis Egmanis in 4th, taking his first win of Supercars tonight, and definitely in a position to maybe make that second one as well. Bill Boak in 5th, strong running for Boakey, definitely his first top 5 in quite a while, with Brenton Foley in behind him in 6th, also strong running for Foley, sort of a return to 2019-2020 levels of form for the pair of them. Noah Tara starts from 7th, relatively quiet in that last race, but stuck with them. With Zach Brown in 8th and Rapp in 9th, so the 2 PBF Oz cars in line astern there. Lockie Lock starting from 10th position, he had a good run as well in that last race. With Dane Liccardo in 11th, he was in a lot of scraps at the back end there. Lewis Wedding, strong recovery for him back up to 12th, means he's set to push a little higher in race 3. With Cam Rutledge in 13th, good run for Cam actually to finish up in 13th position, and Daniel Cox recovering to 14th. Brendan Ross starting this race from the 15th spot. Actually it does stack up with the amount of changes we had. So yes, starting from 15th position for Brendan Ross, with Nathan Higginson in 16th spot. 17th is Peter Thrower with Steve Warwick alongside him in 18th. Good results from Steve so far tonight. It is in a Mustang. 19th is Scotty Murrell. He's definitely fired up, so he'll be pushing hard in race 3. With Lindsay Buddle in 20th, good to see him back up to DNF in race number 2. And 21st and last for this race is Steve Burko with Powerful Gone tonight, and I think 1 or 2 others as well.
Yeah, the last one that dropped out of the session just gone was Lockie Burke. He is done for the night from the messages that we've received. So only 2 races for Burke, 1 race for Palfrey, and 1 more race to go. I guess that's the crux of it here. As we get set now for the grid for the final race of the night. Devenish on pole alongside Tim Redmond, who came oh so close to that race win just a handful of minutes ago. Someone's out of position there. There we go, being reset there. Looks like it was muddled. We get ready for race number 3, the race 12 of the championship of the International Triple Header from Watkins Glen. And off we go for the 3rd time tonight, and a very even start this time at the front, but better start for Redmond. He got a better secondary phase to start. Grossel's going to stick his nose up the inside here, make it 3 wide. He's going to force Devenish out wide, but now Redmond goes to the lead of the race, and it looks like the pole sitter has fallen back to 3rd behind Grossel. Then you come to Phil Boak and Brett Foley, and Turmo's lost out at the start here too. He's lost a couple of spots.
Yeah, Turmo was battling on there with Phil Boak and Richard Foley, and there were 3 wide coming up to turn 2. There was definitely a bit of mirror contact there. They've actually now started the crux of the second of the start of the big train now. Foley and Boak and Turmo now ahead of Tara, Brap. I see Liccardo in there as well, and Lockie Lock. Also Wedding buying in somewhere and all that as well, and Higginson.
Certainly is. So Foley up 1 spot to 5th. Boak gains a spot as well, goes to 4th, and Turmo's the loser out of that one. He moves down to 6th place in the running order, but Foley was trying to defend him here on the outside, heading into the second last corner, turn number 10, and Taro now gets a good run out of that corner as well, and he ranges up onto the back of his stablemate's car in the number 51 machine. And then you've got Brap, and looks like who's that tucked in there behind Brap? Does that happen to be, is that Liccardo? It is Liccardo, so he's had a fairly handy start.
Yeah, he just popped out as well to have a spot at a move down here at turn 1. Brap dropped it well wide off the curb, which sort of opened the door very much for Liccardo. He's just slotting now behind. Liccardo probably going to run back on him up the back straight and try and repass him into the bus stop. But yeah, throwing run for Dane at the start of this race, and as mentioned, Bruce Wedding buying in, Higginson there as well, and Cox in the back, Fred and Ross buying in as well. Yeah, most of the cars still in this range.
Yep, so Liccardo now down into turn number 5, and Brap doesn't send the move there, so he tucks back into the slipstream. As they go through, you can see the reflective shine on the Outward Engineering back number 11, heading down into the bus stop chicane, now down into the bowl, which is turn number 9. And then out of the bowl and latching onto the back of Noah Tara's Wonder Bread backed Mustang.
Yeah, so this puts Dane up towards the lead train, as it were. Although, speaking of lead train, Tim Redmond was actually dealing with Leonard Gross last lap. There was Will Devenish, who's putting it back through pretty early on. It's only just the end of lap 2, and Will Devenish back to the front of this race.
Yeah, there was a couple of over and under trades there at the last 2 corners, and Devenish takes the lead away. Grossel now down the inside of Redmond, and Boak tries to fill the wedge as well and make it 2 cars going through to wrestle away positions 2 and 3. But Grossel goes through, so he gets that move done. Redmond slots into P3, and then it's Boak in 4th. Looks like Foley's now dropped back behind Egmanis, so there's a change there, position number 5 for car number 51. And Noah Tara, he's now looking pretty racy all over the back of the Foley-mobile as they head down into the chicane. No move this time. Oh, and Redmond's out wide. And what happened there? Did he get fed wide, or did he go of his own accord?
Looked like there was a bit of contact perhaps between him and Grossel, very minor, but just went into the point of transition of steering, so it would have unsettled the car massively.
Let's have a bit of a look, see if we can see what happened to Redmond that time, because now put him into the clutches of Lewis Wedding. So Redmond was in 3rd. Here we go, heading down into the bus stop. So he had defended from Boak, and what happened here? Oh yeah, a little bit of incidental contact, I think, just as they tried to go 2 by 2 through the bus stop chicane.
We missed as well by virtue of being in the replay, but Phil Boak has dropped back a few spots. I did catch that one. He tried to reverse enter the last corner, which is going to wipe off a bit of speed. But
and there goes Liccardo. There goes Liccardo in the back of shot. So he's just got a bit too hot into turn number 1, and his nose into the turn 1 fence on the right-hand side. So all that good progress has come to an end.
Yeah, he was having a good battle there with Foley and I think Noah Tara as well. And I'm just going back to the replay to check out what happened today.
Yep, so I think he just may have lost it of his own accord here as we're going through the bus stop chicane, and Boak was all over the back of Noah Tara for a brief moment as he heads down through the bowl now, and now out onto this short chute heading down towards the second last corner.
He got a slight upset from... we need to go back and have a look what happened to Steve Warwick.
Alrighty, so we're looking some word through. Something may have happened to Steve Warwick, because yeah, he's out of business at the moment, and a bit concerning as to see what might have happened to him. Let's go and have a look at this one on the replay. We'll get something for you here. So looks like this is heading up into the last couple of spots of the course. Actually, there was some contact here, so this is a little bit interesting. So Warwick on the inside line here, Muddle trying to go around the outside there, that doesn't work. And then there's, that was Lockie Lock was already sideways across the track, and Warwick got airborne and went over the fence.
Yeah, I cut to him just looking into the field, and I saw a car over a fence and on fire. I'm just like, okay, something's happened here.
Yep, so he's out, Muddle's out, and then Locke's got damage, and he's coming into the pit. So somewhere along the line, Locke also got turned or had a moment, and he ended up in the fence because he was the one that they hit that got launched those cars skywards. So he's now into the pit lane, and he's going to go a lap down. And there is a safety car actually as well. So I think that that's been called as a result of what potentially happened up at turn number 4. Is it, or is it something else? No,
Higginson at the bus stop.
Higginson at the bus stop. So Higginson has had a moment somewhere, and I'm struggling to see where Higginson is in the running order actually at the moment.
He's currently 18th.
He's 18th on the order. Right, here we go. So we'll have a look at what happened to Higginson. He's unfortunate, and all the Pixel cars pitting again, unsurprisingly. Here we go. Nathan Higginson was battling with the real Pixel Holden Racing Team cars and was just well out of shape, lost it, hit the fence and back into traffic and collected by, which of the two cars? That Brap? Oh no, Brown.
Brown, yeah, that was Zach Brown.
Yeah, so. Okay, so that's the answer for that. So Higginson, the cause of the problem, and that explains a lot.
So, yeah, it's a different energy in this race almost.
Yeah, very different energy now. A lot of, I think, impatience, I think, is what is going on here. A lot of cars in the lane. So all these cars were, 11th or 12th on back. So Wedding and Ross. Then you've got the Scott Murrell 420 machine in there as well. And Steve Burko, Dane Liccardo, who of course was around, so he's got earlier on, so he's got nothing to lose. Higginson with the damage, Brown who collected him, and Peter Thrower, and then Lockie Locke, who of course was into the fence at some point as well.
Yeah, so the order as it currently sits under safety car is Will Devenish in the front. Actually, this helps the guys behind Will. Will had checked out with a gap of about a second or two, basically what Grossel did at the start of the last race. So Devenish in first, Grossel in second, who got saved by the safety car from a move from Koenigsegg Martin to the second last corner. So he had to back out of that one. Noah Turra in fourth, Phil Burke still in fifth, or still roundabouts up in fifth. Actually, no, still in fifth, he started fifth. Brendan Foley also where he started in sixth. Tim Redmond has actually pulled something out of the bag here, probably by virtue of some pit stops or something, because he's back up to seventh. So he's actually back on this train now, so he's actually been saved a little bit by the safety car. Brapp in 8th, Cox now up to 9th, he's up 5 spots off that start, so he kept out of trouble. Same with Cam Rutledge, he's currently up 3 spots in 10th. And then the next cars are Lewis Wedding and Brendan Ross Linestone now catching the train, but they're on fresh tyres, and they've possibly done this early enough in the race that it might actually mean something for them.
That's right, they need a short safety car period here, that's what they need. The longer the safety car period goes on, the less time they have to work together to try and clear through some of the field. Now the next car in the queue ahead of them is actually Lockie Locke, who's a lap down.
Yeah, so Locke and
along with Higginson and Zach Brown
behind. Yeah, they're both trapped. Well, the two of them, Locke and Higginson, are both trapped behind Cam Rutledge.
Yeah, they are. So there's two of them there. So you've got Higginson versus and Locke, just the two cars in the queue there. They need to be cleared straight away by Wedding and Ross, and then Scott Murrell to a degree as well. They need to get past fairly quickly. And then you've got Burko and Dane Liccardo, the two CRE Performance Racing Holdens. They are 14th and 15th, and then Peter Thrower's 16th. So Thrower's the last car on the lead lap as it sits right now. And then you've got Locke, who's 18th, Higginson 17th, and Zach Brown, who is 19th and last. Those are three cars on one lap down, rather.
Yeah, just looking in the live chat, Jesse Bennett making a good mention. To be fair, Jesse, this is Gen 2 car, Gen 3 supercar, but yeah, where we've seen a Mustang on fire before, a black Mustang on fire before. Well,
it wasn't a black Mustang anyway, it was a multicolour Mustang. Oh, sorry, black Mustang, you're right, sorry, my bad.
Yes, yes. They are both, they were both black bases, but Super 2 versus Super 3, and for very different reasons. I'd be very surprised if the car wasn't on fire for what happened to Steve in the incident. So
right, here we go. I think we're going back to green flag running here. So green flag is at the ready here. So short safety car, precisely what the Pixel boys wanted to see here. Gives them more than just over half the race to work with on fresher rubber. And they're going to be coming out of 11th and 12th. What can they do over the course of the next 9 laps as Will Devenish gets us underway here. Looks like Grosser was a little bit asleep at the start there because Devenish jumped away. It's got about 2 or 3 car lengths on the 666 machine at the start there, so a little bit of a tardy restart for Grosser, and he forces the field behind him to check up and have to wait that little bit longer before applying the gas pedal.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, a bit of a sleep from Leonard. That said, it doesn't really hurt so much on the out lap here, on the start lap, because he gets the big slipstream. He's now buying in with
Turbo. There we go. Short-lived.
Get out, but he gets the choice line through the chicane, whereas Will's got to pick a defensive line to try and keep Leonard behind. He's not quite got the run where he wanted to. He really needed another straight after the bus stop, another corner for the run Leonard Grosser was getting. So, but he's now got another bite of the cherry with some more slipstream coming now by virtue of this longer, this slightly shorter, well, not back straight, but back straight, with Termo and Noah Turra jumped in there as well, and Phil both now heading sort of the second train with Foley and Tim Redmond back there.
Yeah, Redmond's now trying to buy in on a move on Foley here with Rapp trying to go with him. So there's a couple of groups of cars here. There's a lead group of 4 cars, which is Devenish through to Noah Turra. Then there's the next group of 4 cars on your screen here, Boat, Foley, Redmond, and then to a lesser degree Bratt, who's just lost a little bit of touch there out of the final corner. And then the Pixel boys, they're starting to make a move. They've made 2 moves already. They've moved up to 9th and 10th respectively after restarting 11th and 12th. So they've got 2 cars each. They've managed to get past, we've got there Cox and Rutledge, and Licardo's managed to grab a spot in there too. So the CRE Anson Motorsport Commodores are the first 2 victims of the onslaught from the Real Holden Pixel Racing Team cars.
Yeah, as we mentioned, the way they've been setting themselves up, out of the box strategy, they sort of had to shake it up a bit, and with fresher tyres, they've got a lot of advantage, especially in the slower corners around here, when the aero isn't so strong.
And they've swapped around.
And as it plays on, the advantage will get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger.
Yeah, and I think this is a smart move too, with Ross leading out for Wedding. He's been the quicker car throughout most of the season so far already, so it makes sense that Ross is leading out for, in this case here, and leading the charge to try and hone in on the back of what's Bratt at the moment. Higginson sideways. He keeps it out of the fence importantly, but what it does do is it releases Licardo. I think that was the key piece there for Higginson. He was under blue flags, and he needed to give up a position there as Licardo's well wide at the first corner there. He's not going to make any positions or any time out that far. And look how quickly these guys have caught up. Look at the Pixel guys. They've caught up to the back of Bratt, something chronic through the uphill section. Here goes Ross. Wedding probably should follow him, and he does, but Bratt's now got the inside line, and it might split them up here, and he does. So Bratt falls back into line and splits up the 2 Pixel Holdens.
Yeah, so now it's up to Lewis to put some work in to catch back up to Rossi. Rossi almost, going for a run there. And I don't know, Bratt maybe seeing something that he didn't want to be part of, and he sidestepped the argument and has now dropped in behind Lewis, waiting maybe to try and capitalise on the work that they're doing in Pixel.
Yep, so Grossel's now lost 2nd place. He's lost 3rd place now to Noah Turra very briefly at the second to last corner. And there's a little bit of push and shove at the final corner here. But Turra's looking for a way through, and he's going to have the outside line for turn 1, which is not the favoured line. But if he can hold it there, he might be in a position to consolidate up the hill. Grossel just falls a touch behind in the braking zone for turn 1. But they're going to run side by side. Are they up through the hill here? Yes, they are.
Yeah, but just on the outside, actually getting a slightly better run for Turra, able to slot in front of Grossel. Grossel's going to get a bit of slipstream down the straight. They're not much, seeing how he's buried up the rear end.
Grossel was smart there. Grossel was very smart there because Noah Turra, he had to concede, and Turra had the slide job on, and that gave Grossel a great run up to turn 5 to re-challenge here, but it made a bit of a clumsy attempt at trying to repass the 26, and that's unfortunately to his disadvantage. Now Turra's consolidated position 3.
Yeah, but I don't think it's quite done for yet. Not only that, Leonard's got a little bit of worry from the cars behind that. Franny is catching, sort of pushed along, as it were, by Ross and Wedding. Redmond now looking for a move on Foley, but also trying to defend from Ross, who's trying to go on the outside of him for position number 7.
He certainly is, and Ross is going to get this done on the inside here. Is there a crisscross happening? Redmond's going to look for the crisscross now and be in position for down the inside at turn 1. Wedding's going to try and get interested here as Ross gets a much better drive out of the final corner, and he'll give a little bit of a toe to the 88 heading down into turn number 1, and Wedding is going to take that position away from Redmond.
Yeah, there was a strong strategy call on the team there to Ross to come across, not only fix the stream off of Redmond, but to gift it to Lewis to try and bring him alongside. Tim's just been mugged there, but that's sort of the strength to get of a two-car team when they're working together.
They certainly are working together. Heading up the hill here. Now the friends are going to get together and they're going to put a rolling roadblock on to stop the Pixel onslaught, I think, heading down into the bus stop chicane, and they do. So Boat pulled out alongside Foley. Foley actually picked up a position there. Boat went backwards one spot, and now they've got their hands full with a seasoned veteran who's got a few tricks up his sleeve this year. He certainly brought them all to Watkins Glen this week, but he hasn't got the tyre life that the 888 and the 88 do. And
yeah, we're seeing similar stuff from Foley and Boak as well. Maybe not necessarily as well planned as Ross and Wedding, but I saw something similar where Foley came across to give Boak a little bit of that slipstream to help him that over cross. So definitely a bit of team into play here, and I suppose Timmy and Ricardo back there are missing out a little bit because they haven't got anyone to play with, whereas Lewis and Rossi and Phil and Brenton do.
They certainly do. Heading down now to turn number 1, lap 13 commences. Just 4 laps to go now in this race, so early safety car sort of means it is going to be about 20 minutes for each of the races tonight, there or thereabouts. Foley's got his hands full now with his former teammate, Brendan Ross, who's now switches to the inside. That's move done, I think. Let's have a look out the other side. You can see, yeah, Foley's right there, and Foley's gone. So Ross gets the job done through the bus stop chicane up to 5th place. So that's a great drive from him. Unfortunately, his teammate hasn't been able to go with him. Can Ross get to the podium, Rody? This is the real question. Can he get to the podium in the next 3 laps?
At this point, I think he's going to have some extreme pace because Grossel and Tara are able to tow themselves along. They're not working together from the point of view of results, but they're going to work together a little bit here just to try and stave off Ross. Ross has to have, he has to be noticeably stronger through these slower corners to have any chance of buying it on them. Although slapping the wall like that at the last corner will not help.
Oh yeah, he gave that a huge rub there, and Foley seized on that. He's actually trying to follow him in the slipstream, hoping that it's going to hurt his run down into turning. Wedding squeezes the brakes. He had to fight. He fired it down the inside at 1, and the car twitched, and he managed to pull it up. He's going to get Phil Boak down at turn 1, and he's going to hold it through turn number 2, and Boak has to give up the spot. So that was a ballsy move from Wedding there to get that position number 7 away from Phil Boak.
Like this is like going back to 2019, even back to 2018 with seeing these guys racing like they are. And yeah, Tim Redmond and Dane Lefebvre don't actually grab also trying to buy into this as well now. But with the way they're swapping positions and moving all over the road, there's not really too much spot for anyone. Isn't the 4 that we're watching to try and dive in on this one. Coming now down to, what is that, 2 laps to go.
Yeah, Ross is not making any ground at the moment, though, on Grossel and Noah Turra. He was about 2/10 slower through Sector 1 alone on the last lap, and then he was quicker than Grossel, but he was actually quicker than them in the second sector, so he made some ground in the second sector, but he's not making it fast enough. That's the problem. He's got 2 laps to go, and the margin that he has to make in the next 2 laps sits at around about 2 and a bit seconds, so he really needs to get a move on here.
Yeah, fastest lap through there for Chemo, just buried underneath his teammate Will Devenish's rear wing. And they've streaked away to a lead of about 4 seconds over Noah Turra, so they're not going to be challenged much. It's really the fight for the podium now is between Noah Turra and Leonard Grossel, but I'm not sure if Leonard's got too much more to go with a lap and a bit to go. And yeah, Ross is slowly catching a little bit, but then you get to a back straight like this, and Turra starts to drag Leonard along again, and then he starts to fade a little bit of the distance, doesn't fix the driver. Yeah,
he's got about 1.5 seconds to make up, Ross. That's where it is. He's got it down to under 2 seconds now, but he really needs to put those tyres to use. He really needs to throw caution to the wind here, I think, on this final lap to really have any shot at... The podium's probably a long shot now, maybe 1 position more if Grossel starts to drop off the back of Noah Turra and starts to lose as much of the slipstream as he's hoping for. As the final lap commences, race leaders have taken the white flag right now. So Devenish ahead of Egmanis. Top 2 in the championship. They lead the constructors, the team's championship, as well as 1-2 in the drivers. So they've both had a win tonight. So this is for round honours here, I would say. Just looking at my math, because it was Devenish who finished second in race 1, first in race 2, and then it was I think it was the inverse in race number 1. So this is for the jockey bickies tonight. This is for the bragging rights, and here goes Turmo in the number 51. He's down the inside the bus stop chicane. He takes a lot of liberties with it. Is he going to skate out the other side, or is he going to hang on to it? No, he hangs on to it, but Devenish looks to the inside here as Egmanis looks for the late apex, and they may run side by side to the final corners.
Yeah, the way it was going, I thought we were nearly going to see an airplane crash in the teammates, which wouldn't have gone down well. But very bold move from Cam, and to be fair, I think Will saw that coming and didn't really want any part to play in it and very much got out of it. All things considered, still a very aggressive move from Turmo. And up to the last corner now, he might just be able to hold off Devenish.
Yeah, he's going to do it.
He's letting them have that one, and they're going for a formation finish over the line. Bit bold considering how close Tara is behind.
Yep, certainly is. And Tara outlasts not only Grossel, but Grossel manages to outlast Ross as well.
Got him.
And Ross nearly got him at the end there, so it wasn't much in it. So Ross will finish 5th after all of that. So it was Egmanis with his second win, not only for the night, but for his career, ahead of his teammate Will Devenish, and then Noah Tara finishing 3rd, ahead of Grossel and Brendan Ross, who came a hair's width away from a 4th place finish there. Brent Foley home in 6th place, that's where he started. Wedding 7th, so he's had a good run, finishes in 5th place, so he'll be, 5 places up from where he started, so that's a good end to the night for him. Tim Redmond from the front row of the grid, falling through the order there, just being absolutely mugged through a lot of the slipstreaming. That's what this circuit's brought out in it. Dane Liccardo moves up 2 spots. He goes from 11th to 9th, and then Bratt loses 1. He finishes on the last spot inside the top 10. You've got Cox and Murrell, they're the next 2 in 11th and 12th, and then Peter Thrower in the Beyond Electrical Mustang, Cam Rutledge in the CRE Electrical Commodore. Phil Boak, he faded late. He must have had an issue or been tipped out somewhere along the line there, because he's had a massive fall from grace in the final laps after we saw him up in that sort of top 10 quite comfortably. And then Steve Burko was the last driver on the lead lap. Outside of that, it was Zach Brown and Lachlan Locke, 17th and 18th. They were a lap down. Higginson retired after the safety car restart. We saw him over on the pit lane fence, and then we saw what happened to Lindsay Muddle and to Steve Warwick. And, well, Rhodey, I don't know what to say about Turmo, but this is his way of celebrating. And I think the engine's about to let go, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, just looking at the smoke coming off the number 51.
And to be fair, I think this goes back to the days of T-Sack of him winning races. I can recall he had his own way of celebrating the wins, and I think this was it. So it's a bit of a callback, as it were, on the day where they're also all sort of running callback liveries in a way as well. But no, this is something different. It sort of speaks to a degree to Alan Kulwicki, but he just went around the track in the reverse direction rather than going around the track backwards. Yeah, that's right. But something different, and you know what? It just a little bit different to the traditional burnout, and kind of hope we get to see a bit more of it.
Hope we do as well. Well, we're going to bring our top 2 for the round up in to see us in just a few moments' time with Egmanis and Will Devenish, who went toe-to-toe in that one. But I'm going to let you figure out, Reddy, who else do we want to have a chat to? Who else has had a noteworthy performance? There's been some very, very interesting racing tonight. That's what I'm sort of looking at. I don't know. I'm thinking maybe we need to bring maybe the hard-charging Brendan Ross up, or someone like that. Let's have a talk to somebody that has had a good night, someone that is worthwhile having a chat to.
Yeah, like a Ross would be an option. A wedding would be another one, actually, because I think I'm gonna have to get the Discord open so I can actually let people know rather than just throwing it out there. But I think like Lewis is going to be interesting, because like he's had, by his own admission, a very average season. He probably might still have some bits of tonight where he can look at it and go, "Oh, this should have been better." But with how qualifying on race 1 went, to come back into where he's ended up in races 2 and 3, that's a pretty good running. It's one of those similar to the issue I think we had in Dev Series, where we couldn't pick someone to promote. There's a lot of stories that have gone on tonight. A lot of easy gimmies. Lennart doing well as well. I'll chuck Leonard in for that as well, actually. So I'll make some pings in the Discord for some people that I'd like to chat to. But yeah, Leonard did fairly well as well. I mean, I probably even want to talk to Bogey a little bit because he did quite well, but I've got to probably share it around because I've always got some bias because I know who did well on my team because they're my team and I'm intrinsically nated to follow them. So I suppose.
Well, then maybe I'll take care of it then, and we'll start by bringing up our interviewees that are top for the round. So, I mean, we've got a round winner here sitting right next door to us, plus he's picked up his first 2 Supercars race wins tonight. So how about we start with him?
Alrighty, so Termo, it's been a while. I think we go back to the last time I can remember you winning and being in interview queue, and I think that was the start of Termo's interpreter service. But I'm interviewing you, so I can't do that for you this time out. But Curtis Ekmanis, your first 2 wins in the ASR Supercars Championship. How's it feel?
It's yeah, not normal.
That's certainly one way to put it. You set yourself up well in just tonight in general. I suppose, I don't know, maybe running a championship winning livery influenced you as well or helped you out a little bit. But yeah, a very strong result for yourself overall. Just talk us through your night.
I didn't expect that pace. That's all I can say. For whatever reason, it's me and American tracks they just click. Like, for example, I remember my first ever victory out of GT3 was in the Laguna Seca. That's what it comes down to me. So I had the pace around American tracks.
Fair enough. But yeah, very, very good run in the end. 2 wins and unlucky there to not make it 3 podiums. But yeah, not quite round honours, but best of the rest. And yeah, definitely setting yourself up strong coming into the rest of the season.
Yeah.
All right. Try and get some more thoughts out of you. I know we're not 100% confirmed on whether the Bend will be the next track on the calendar, but as things sit right now, it's scheduled to be. What's your thoughts on the Bend?
It's a track. Got corners.
I suppose we don't have too much racing history here for us to talk back onto how you've done previously around there, so it's a bit tricky. But Watkins was a new track to the grid. I mean, and you did fairly well. You think you might have the same sort of luck or same sort of results with the Bend being a completely new track to most of the grid as well?
I don't know. Only time will tell.
Fair enough. Very diplomatic answer for that one. But good to see you up the front, Tomo, and hope we see some more of those reverse in-laps across the season to mark a win for the number 51, but a great performance tonight for you.
Thank you.
Alrighty. We'll get this one out of the way. I suppose we'll swing across now to your teammate in Will Devenish. Will, not only is this the night where we thought we might be able to break that order of you getting all the race wins, but you couldn't even just let one get taken off you. You had 2 removed from you, but pretty good run overall. Still taking the round honours.
Yeah, then as you guys know, I pushed pretty hard to get some sort of reverse grid on a 3 race night, and that sort of turned out the way I wanted it to. It was, at least up the front, the racing was mad crazy fun. It was so good and so respectful. And yeah, that night couldn't have gone any better. It's been 5 years of CRE, and we've finally gotten a 1-2 in a race. So I'm pretty proud of the team and the effort everyone's put in for a track we've never raced at before.
Yeah, you make a strong point. Actually, I've missed that in the stats, but yeah, even with some of the strong races you had previously with Pete Savage behind the wheel for the team and some of the drivers you've had fill in the second seat, yeah, just the first time you've gotten a 1-2 for the team. Interestingly, a 1-2 that you're not heading, but it's a small detail to gloss over. It still puts you pretty comfortably in the championship, and obviously the performances get you guys set up well for the teams as well. But we asked earlier, and we might get a similar answer from you. But what's your thoughts on the bend?
I haven't. I've done about 3 laps of testing in the mod we have. I'm trying to limit how much time I'm on track. Don't want early access and whatnot. In general, the bend I have raced, to be honest, haven't really enjoyed it all that much. And in all honesty, I'm about to head on a plane, and we'll have about 1 day of practice when I come back on the bend. So yeah, not really looking forward to it, but look, it's a track we haven't tried before, and that's going to be great, and it's going to, as you said before, bring up a whole lot more stories, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, a strong race for you, strong result for you tonight. We'll catch you in a few weeks' time, but crucially, enjoy your break, and we will see you in a few weeks' time.
Thank you.
Alrighty, now that we've got the top 2 for results out the way, we've got a few other guys that we've thrown up the invite to have a chat to. So I'm probably going to start with Lewis Wedding. Lewis, at least as the night started, it probably wasn't a night you wanted to remember, but the way things have wrapped up, it's not been a bad night.
Oh, I'd completely disagree, but I guess each has their own opinion. Lads have their own opinions and stuff, but that was, I think that sums up the season that I've had personally, and the team. It hasn't been very good. We've, struggled our way through. We've had bits of bad luck, some of it our own fault, a lot of it, just plain bad luck, and with, sometimes instances of the cars. Tonight was just culmination of that, I guess. I mean, you had qualifying where I was going to at least put myself, somewhere where I thought I deserved to be, and probably wouldn't have been top 5, would have been maybe 7th or something like that. But with the strategy we had, it would have been really interesting. But unfortunately, track cut. So that despite my right side wheels being with inside the lines of the circuit at the last corner, so that stuffed that up and started from the back, which has been a tale of the season. And of course, that led on to sort of race 1, where obviously the safety car threw the strategy out a little bit, but we were able to adjust. It was a flexible one, and then the pit lane speeding, which I don't know how I've done it, but it just happens. It's the way it is. So that was a write-off, and then race 2 again. I mean, I haven't had so much KFC and family feeds in a day in quite a while. So I'm a bit bloated from all the family feeds, and then race 2 there's a bit chaotic. So was able to live. Didn't have any major accidents, which is a positive, but I'm certainly pretty demotivated and dejected after tonight, where I think the team we pulled all the right strategies. They seem to work, but we just can't seem to put ourselves in the right positions due to various other circumstances. A lot of the time out of our control. So for me, it was I guess it was a good fun to sort of battle at the end and have some respect with people. So battling with Bokey and I can't remember a couple of the others there. I think Foley as well. It was actually quite refreshing to be able to race side by side with people and not just be forced straight off the track or just being hit in the middle of the corner repeatedly. So that was good fun. I guess that's a slight positive that I can take away, but I don't know if I'll be back for the bend. It's been quite frustrating.
All right. Well, we'll put that part aside. Regardless of whether you do make it to the bend or not, what's your thoughts on the track?
Well, obviously, initially, I wasn't too much of a fan of it, but certainly after getting a bit of driving with it, it's actually not too bad. Obviously, I think we're going to the shorter layout, provided we don't have any further issues with it and stuff like that. So that'll be interesting. Obviously, a completely different layout to what we have tonight. So even though the slipstream will be a thing down the pit straight, elsewhere it's going to be quite interesting. Traction's going to be at a premium. as is sort of braking, because there's overtaking zones into sort of turn 1. You've got that one off the little dog leg, probably I think that's turn 6 or 7. You've got that little hairpin there, and then you've got really the penultimate corner as well where you can pass. So it should throw up interesting racing. I know some people are probably more glad to be racing there than the longer version, but I was doing laps in the longer version, the GT car, when we were doing some testing, and it was actually really fun. So I was actually really bummed that we couldn't race there due to the problems we had with the circuit that we had to fix. But I think Supercars around that shorter layout, it does suit them a lot better. So I think it'll be good. Hopefully we can actually get some teams other than CRE competing, because so far it's been if you're not in one of those cars, you're sort of nowhere. So I don't know. Maybe we've got to do a bajillion laps collectively, but I certainly don't have the time. But yeah, I think it'll be good. And yeah, I know everyone, Higo, Rossi, Nether, and even yourself, Reddy, and Will, and everyone that's done the testing, and there's a few others as well. So it should be good. And even later on, we've got this alternate layout that no one's really used in real life before. That was actually quite fun when we were testing as well, which we may use in a future series. So it'll be good. Yeah, hopefully it throws up some good racing.
Absolutely. Well, good to see you tonight, Lewis. And as you mentioned, maybe not quite the night you wanted to have, but still some good results and a good turn of fortune towards the end of it. Yeah, good to see you tonight, and we'll hopefully catch you in a few weeks' time.
No worries, guys, and cheers for the call.
Alrighty, switching over now to Leonard Grossel. Starting the season in Development Series, coming to Supercars after the first round, and I think that might actually be the first time this year you've picked up a podium.
Yeah, first time for me podium. Race 1 start didn't, go my way. Just, poor luck on my part. Got turned around, I think. Not really sure, but happy to have crawled back up the order and finish P3 in race 2, and even the P4 in race 3. Just really, really happy with that.
Absolutely. There's a solid recovery drive there in race 1 to get yourself back into the position that actually gave you pole for race 2 and really sort of set you up to have a second bite at the cherry. But yeah, 3rd in race 2, 4th in race 3, and maybe not quite had the 10th needed to compete right at the front, but still gave it a red hot crack.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All the front running guys are just, especially around here. I don't know what kind of cars they're driving, what kind of setups, but it's just the speed they have, especially in the second sector, on me was insane. So I'm not mad at all that they passed me. I was expecting it, honestly. So once again, just really happy that I managed to crawl back up the order and finish as high as I did.
Absolutely. Well, after tonight, that'll bring you back towards the top 10 of the points, which, considering that you weren't planning to be here 4 months ago, that's a pretty good run. I suppose the bend is more alien to you than it is for everyone else, considering that you're not an Australian local. But from what you have seen of the bend, what's your thoughts on it?
I've honestly not seen any of it. I know that it exists, but I've never seen onboard, like a full onboard lap. I don't know the layout at all, so it's going to be a complete change of pace for me, having to learn the circuit and how to be quick on it.
Alrighty, fair enough. Well, great work tonight, Leonard, to get yourself a top 3 and to be running at the pointy end most of the night. And we'll catch you in a few weeks' time for the bend.
Yeah, cheers, boys.
Alrighty, second last is Brenton Foley. And Foley, not quite the championship winning pace you might have had of years of past, but it probably had a bit of a tinge of 2019 to you in some of that racing.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised when I saw the message to jump up into the broadcast booth because it's been a while. But just had a lot of fun racing. Kind of in the middle of the top 10 was pretty much where the pace was, and with the reverse grid and with a little bit of luck at my start on the first race and things like that, had a bit of a chance to race right up the front for a little bit. But yeah, overall it was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. We'll keep these quick considering relative finishing orders and all that. But yeah, a good run for yourself and Boki, and obviously all the PBF as a whole. There was a point there where you had a PBF 1, 2, 3, and I think you had all 5 cars in the top 10. Bit of a resurgence of form from the team.
Yeah, was race 2 was sort of a double-edged sword. Leonard and myself really, and Phil as well. I don't want to speak too much for him though, but really wanted to see if we could kind of hold it with that gap. But we were on the absolute limit for tyres, so each race having a safety car was kind of a godsend. So glad we got the safety car, but at the same time would have been very interesting to see if we could have held or managed some sort of a gap to finish a little bit higher in that second race. But yeah, overall it was really good to see PBF up the front again.
Absolutely. Well, good to see you tonight, Foley, and obviously we'll catch you in a few weeks' time for the next round of the season. But great work tonight.
Thanks very much.
And finally, Phil Boak. Pretty strong run from you there, Boki. Not quite in the spot to drop into a podium, but still, all things considered, probably one of your better runs in the last 12 months.
Yeah, I mean, well, thereabouts. Wasn't bad. I didn't do a single lap of practice. So my first laps I cut with just before quali. So yeah, pretty happy. I mean, race 3, last lap, first turn wasn't too pleasant. I was pretty disappointed about that after the run we had with an 8th and a 5th, and looking for another strong result and managed to spin it. I still don't even know what I did or what happened, but that was disappointing. But otherwise, pretty good night. Pretty happy.
Yeah. As I mentioned, a bit of a resurgence for all the team, which is good to see with now the 5 cars, with including Leonard Grossel. I obviously Foley's covered that part of it for me though. So for yourself, just for some final thoughts from people, the Bend, is that a place you're interested, that you're excited for, or are you a bit wary?
Not sure. I don't love the track in real life. I think if it's the 21st of July, I'm actually not sure if I'm there. It's the wife's birthday, so not sure. But yeah, as in real life, I don't love the track. So, and I haven't driven on it in the sim yet at all. I don't think so. Yeah, I'm not sure. Not sure how it'll go if I'm there.
Alrighty. Well, if not, there'll definitely be someone in your car, I'd imagine. But great to see you here tonight, Boki, and we'll catch either you or your car in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, man.
Alrighty, and that's been the guys we want to chat to. If we had more time, I would have also brought in Tim Redmond, who's so close there to a win, but we'll definitely catch Tim later in the season with the sort of pace he's been holding at Beyond Racing.
Yeah, I do agree. And I think that's probably the heartbreak story of the night for us, is that he was so close to picking up that race win. We would have potentially had 3 different winners on the night, you know, as to how everything ended up. If only, you know, he managed to, you know, just outlast for a couple of corners. But look, I take solace from the fact that he did absolutely everything right with regards to how he played that. He knew he had to defend down the inside, going down to the second last corner. He knew that he had to then sort of box Will out a little bit wide at the second last corner to really hold position. But he was a fair racer, to his credit. He basically gave him as much room as he was required to do. And unfortunately, it just came up a couple of corners short. But definitely a story to tell. It's definitely a story to tell, and I think that the Bend potentially could still tell a few more stories yet. And speaking of stories, that's where we leave this one for tonight. It's the end of round 5 of the championship, and we'll see you in 3 weeks for round number 6. So until then, please drive safely, everybody, and see you next time. Bye for now.